That was good.
That was pretty good.
Yeah.
Welcome to Movie Boners, everyone.
For being remote again, I feel like it was pretty good.
Yep. But you know what? That was an awesome week. I'm so glad we got to do that.
Yeah.
That was a good
I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed editing it.
Weekend.
Those of you that don't know, go back and listen to last week's episode. It was in person.
Yeah, it was.
I felt like the energy was just different. It was really fun.
It was, oh man, I had so much fun. It was so weird. I mentioned this right when we were recording or maybe right after, but it was so hard for me to figure out where I was actually supposed to look.
Yeah, you said it in the beginning.
Yeah. But I got over that real quick and just decided to abandon the camera and just talk directly to you. Like, he's here. I'm talking to him. I'm not talking through a screen.
Right. So what beer do you have this week, Dustin?
Oh, it's a good one. It's one that I got introduced to down here in Texas. So I am drinking Hopadilla IPA.
Nice.
Yeah, brewed down here. I don't know how to pronounce their brewing name. I'm not going to try.
Nice.
I figure I make an ass out of myself enough. I don't feel like doing it again right off the bat.
Wow, interesting.
But it is a pretty good IPA. I think you would really dig this beer. Man.
Okay, interesting.
I think you would, yeah.
Not as much as I'm digging this beer because this is a very special beer. My wife, Christy, got this for me. It comes in a neat little box. Hold on, I got to show the whole thing going on here.
Oh, my God.
And it's from Special Delivery Brewing Company. And it says, "You're going to be a daddy. Baby Lawler."
Oh, my God. It actually says that.
I know. Baby Lawler coming soon. So, yeah, my wife is pregnant right now as we speak. It's all my fault.
Woo!
Dustin got to find out last week. You get to find out now.
Oh, my God. All right. It has been a little while since I felt that, like, immediate joy. So a lot of people don't know too much backstory, but been waiting for you guys to finally have kids for like a decade.
That's true. We've been married a long time.
Yeah, I'm so stoked. I don't know.
Sure.
So last weekend,
yeah,
coming and visiting you guys, it was awesome. And Christy was like, "Well, why don't you put your stuff in the podcast room?" Because we had that was our little studio podcast area. And I had already known that you weren't there.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, maybe just for old time's sake, we're gonna do it. I don't even remember seeing the room. All I remember is seeing the photos on the wall.
Yeah.
And just immediate yay!
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. We had taken out all of the couches and stuff. That couch was a bitch to get out of there, by the way. I had to cut it in half to get it out of there. But yeah, we had ultrasound photos and stuff. It was a fun little announcement.
It was awesome.
So yeah, keep an eye out.
Excited.
In the future, we'll be doing a dad related episode. That'll be really fun. Yep. But we have several things lined up before then. Speaking of things lined up, though, this beer segment, this very special beer segment, is brought to you by our sponsor. What's old is new again. There's a phrase about that, I think. Wandering Lion Studios. Yeah. Our good friends at Wandering Lion Studios, they are sponsoring our beer segment again. And go and check them out. They are awesome independent filmmakers in Michigan. WanderingLionStudios.biz. Even if you're not a filmmaker or you don't need filmmakers to film things for you, they have really cool services about you can send them their script and they'll give you constructive feedback and stuff.
It's also a really cool, they provide a pretty cool platform for you to be able to discover independent artists.
Yeah.
So check it out, support all the independent artists and all that. It is pretty cool bringing them up again. I feel like it's been a minute, but I guess that's how these things go.
Yeah.
But thank you, Wandering Lions.
Yeah, they'll have some really cool projects coming here soon, but wanted to get that started. And then I thought it was really cool that we get to talk about them on this episode, which is about a very independent filmmaker who is a success story in that respect.
Yeah, considering where he started to what he became or is, I don't know. He seems to be kind of taking some time right now. That's okay. It is so much fun, like seeing his progression, because it didn't take very long for it to just explode.
Yeah, it's starting out from very unique indie films to some of the most mainstream films of all time.
Right. Now, what's funny about that is we are omitting the giant success part of his career so far.
Yeah, so this episode's all about Peter Jackson, who is a world-renowned director, but also a pretty great writer. He's co-written pretty much all of his movies. And we're focusing on the 7 movies that are not the Tolkien series. So all of the Peter Jackson movies that are not Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit trilogy. I'm really interested. It was really interesting seeing his movies from that perspective of, this guy makes some of the weirdest shit I've ever seen and didn't have that much success. He didn't have he had 5 movies before he did Lord of the Rings, fairly unknown cast. He had 2 movies with young, one was first time Kate Winslet, one was Michael J. Fox, but no other real actors that you really recognize in any of those movies. And then throw him into Lord of the Rings with massive production, massive cast, massive budgets, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Why him was my main question.
I mean, he had a vision. He knew what he wanted to do, and man, he did it.
Yeah.
I have some, I love Peter Jackson. I really do. I think his movies, there was only one that I watched this week that I just don't care for, but we'll get into that later. And I will admit, I did not get around to watching his most recent, which is that documentary about World War One.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I ran out of time, but that's what happens when you fly back from your home state and you've lost 3 days worth of prep work. So
yeah, it was a short week.
Only missing the one. I think I did okay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I wanted to get to it. I thought it was really interesting. I read a thing recently about his process of making that World War One documentary. Yeah. So he made it on the anniversary, 100-year anniversary of the ending of World War One, and he talked about the process of taking that old footage and basically upscaling it to HD and converting it and cleaning it up. And they even had to do redubs from lip readers and stuff like this.
Right.
But the thing that was really interesting about it was he talked about his older movies, his first 4 movies, which are pretty low quality. He still owns all the rights to them. He just has never re-released them in an upscaled format. But he was talking about he has a severe interest now in he's done a test of Dead Alive, where he took it through the same process he did for the World War One footage to bring it back up to HD, and he said it was pretty incredible. So it sounds like he's really interested in re-releasing Bad Taste and all of his early movies, which sucked visually, the actual film quality.
You can tell he had no money to make Bad Taste. You can tell.
Yeah, and he even talked about Bad Taste. He had made, and then he didn't have any money to do anything with it, so it kind of sat under his bed and collected actual mold, and you can actually see mold on this on the images and stuff of the film. So he would like to clean that up, and I think that would be so cool. But there is also
that would be an interesting.
There's a charm, I think, to the low quality of them.
I would see. I'm a little conflicted with that. I think watching Dead Alive in HD or just kind of cleaning the picture up, maybe making the gore a little more vibrant, that could be really fun. Considering, I think it still is claimed as the bloodiest film ever made.
I believe it.
Yeah, there's a lot of blood, and it all comes at once. But part of me, he doesn't strike me as the kind of director that would try to go back and make a new version or pull a George Lucas essentially and ruin the film by adding new stuff into it or taking stuff out of it. I feel like if he just updated the picture quality, that would be okay or more okay.
Yeah, that's exactly why I clicked on the link that I saw, because it was like something about how Peter Jackson wants to clean up his old movies. And I was like, no, don't remove all that gore. That's so good. And then it was like in the actual content, it was like, you know, he just wants to like actually make the image better. He likes all the gore, obviously, still.
Yeah. But part of me, like you said earlier, I kind of think that crazy indie broke filmmaker look to those first two movies, or three movies, I think that kind of helps give them a lot more personality.
Yeah.
So
there's a ton of charm.
I'm okay with the graininess and the, like, were you using thrown away cameras that were not working all that great? You know, that kind of feel. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Specifically with his movies. I think if any other filmmaker tried to make those movies the same way he was, I don't think it would work. And I learned watching all these movies, for most of them, minus the big epics, he uses like the same film style, the weird like swooping camera shots that you can tell are handy cam and like they're not smooth.
Yeah.
You can tell he's bumping into like something or someone.
Yeah. You can see the footsteps from the walking.
You know, like, I like that style. I think there's a lot of fun personality or like you said, charm.
Yeah.
To how he does that.
Yeah.
I think he might be the only one that gets away with that.
I really like these episodes that we do where we focus on a single actor or a single director and watch all their stuff. I try to generally watch
at least as much as possible.
Yeah, watch as much as possible. For 7 movies, it's not that hard. And so I enjoyed it a lot, being able to see he does a very interesting job of directing and editing his movies, where there's a lot of cuts. There's like a lot of quick cuts and quick shots, and he'll, in the middle of something happening, like throw in a cut of like a point of view image or a reverse angle or some detail that it just focuses on for a second. So there's a lot of cuts, not in like a bad way. Like I've criticized how many cuts there are in that scene from Taken 3 where Liam Neeson climbs the fence. Not like that, not in a bad way, but he does do like more cutting than normal for like other movies that I like, which tend to be longer scenes, like uncut scenes. Yeah. So it's really interesting, but he does it so purposefully, where he focuses on a specific thing or shows a point of view shot of a zombie's head who's like half off and backwards, and so the camera's upside down, and it's just so fun.
I was just telling, so I try to have one of the films that we've watched like playing while we record. And so I told my daughter, like, okay, you're allowed to watch these, but you need to know one is about ghosts and a ghost hunter. It's a comedy, horror. They try to like stop a reaper from taking people. She was like, okay. I'm like, it's got, you know, Marty from Back to the Future is in it. So if you need content, okay. I was like, or I'm going to put on what's known as the goriest, bloodiest movie ever made. It's a comedy as well, but it's gross. And I told her about one of the zombies where like the zombie's head is only, it's like a Pez dispenser.
Yeah.
And the zombie tries to eat some custard, and you see it just kind of like glopping down on her throat. And my daughter was like, I'm going to throw up, Dad.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're putting in the ghost one. That way you're not throwing up.
There are some very gross scenes, for sure, in at least the first 3 movies. And I was grossed out by it, but I also really appreciated it. If you like practical effects, especially practical horror effects, definitely check out Peter Jackson's early work, because he focuses immediately on that. We'll get into it in a second, but Bad Taste, one of my favorites of his, is his very first not short film, and the effects continue to blow me away. As soon as you see something cool happen, you're like, oh, that must have been so difficult to do. That was be the only thing they did. And then the next thing is tops that. It keeps one-upping itself throughout the movie, and it gets cooler and cooler and grosser and grosser. But it's just such a fun, effects-focused movie.
Yeah. I had a quick debate after watching Bad Taste if I should have a bowl of green goop and just sit here and randomly slurp it, but I don't have any green goop.
That's too bad.
It is.
One of the other things I didn't know until I started looking at his movies more in depth this week, I knew that he generally writes and directs his movies, but he co-writes them pretty much predominantly. After his first movie, he made it in 1987. He married his wife in 1987, and they together have been co-writing his movies ever since. So Fran Walsh, his wife, has been married to him ever since, and they've been writing movies, all of his movies. And so I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of, they'll have added writers to it. Mm-hmm. And then usually someone has written the actual screenplay, but he's always either co-writing the screenplay or at least doing the full story, all with his wife, which I'm like, hey, you guys must have, I bet that's the weirdest, nerdiest, home.
Yeah.
Because he looks like a hobbit. He's literally a tall hobbit.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine what his home, I don't know. No offense to hobbits.
Hobbits are important. They save the world. But yeah, I think that's fun. I think that I always enjoy seeing how Christopher Nolan and his wife produced movies together, and Zack Snyder and his wife produced movies together. So I think it's a cool thing.
It is a cool thing.
For that reason, I meant to get around to watch Mortal Engines, which came out in 2018, which Peter Jackson and his wife and Philippa Boyens, who has written every movie with them since Lord of the Rings, all three of them wrote it, but it was directed by someone else. I meant to get around to it, but I didn't.
I had thought he directed it, but then when I went to because I was going to make it a point to watch that, because I was like, man, I never got around to watching his futuristic epic that has nothing to do with Middle Earth. And then I was, oh, you didn't direct this one. Okay, I'm going to skip that one.
Yeah.
I was maybe some other day, man, but not today.
Yeah, exactly. So,
well, should we get into his movies?
Let's get into it. Yeah, this is going to be such a weird episode for one thing.
It's so odd. I can't wait to describe these movies.
The thing that struck me about them is that they're just all so creative, and I think
fun
throughout this whole episode. I'm going to be trying to connect what in the world made him a good choice for Lord of the Rings. And I think the main thing I've come up with so far is that he was very creative. He was able to take the fantasy side of things. And even though there was tons of blood and guts and sex and Muppet nipples and all this stuff in it, it was still basically a fantasy story that was very creative. And so I could see that even though he was, if I was in charge of finding the best director for Lord of the Rings, one of the most beloved trilogies or book series of all time, that it is going to have a massive budget and a massive undertaking, I would be like, okay, so we have Spielberg, we have a serious established big name directors that could certainly take that and do that. So to take Peter Jackson, who has made Meet the Feebles, Bad Taste, all of these weirdo movies.
Yeah.
I'm like, what in the world? So it's going to be interesting to talk about. And mostly splatter films, disgusting, gory splatter films that make Sam Raimi's Evil Dead look like a normal mainstream movie.
And Evil Dead, those are, if you listen to our horror episode, you know, Evil Dead's like my all-time favorite. You know, I got.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. By the way, it's different.
Keeping it fresh.
That's right. Well, and it's actually a nod to previous episodes, so people need to go and listen to previous episodes, mainly 2.
There you go.
3. We got sci-fi, horror, and then action.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
I lost my train of thought, but yeah. Oh yeah. Evil Dead is still a pretty gross.
Yeah.
Like, there are some nasty parts in that film, all 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, Dead Alive, there is something very unique to it. We will get to it, but there's some fun scenes in Dead Alive.
Yeah.
I should probably, just as a subtle warning, when we describe these movies, especially Dead Alive, it will be gross. And you will probably feel your gag reflex kick in.
That's for the audience and also for people in Dustin's home.
I got no response. So when I start talking about them biting their lips off and tearing their skin from their face, nothing.
Kids. All right. So, Bad Taste. His first non-short film, feature-length film, 1987. Also, the other thing about Peter Jackson, he's our first like foreign filmmaker we've talked about. He's predominantly
technically, because his first 4 movies were New Zealand.
Yeah, big time based in New Zealand. Very much watching those movies, you can start to see specific New Zealand references and all that stuff,
like all over the place.
Yeah, I was gonna look for a New Zealand import beer or like some weird gross Kiwi thing, but I couldn't find anything.
I just went with a ridiculous beer that I have grown to be a pretty big fan of.
Okay, appropriate. Nicely done.
See, I'm pretty good sometimes with those off the cuff.
Yeah, I didn't,
or on the spot.
I didn't even set you up for that on purpose.
Why'd you go there? That's not what I wanted. That's what I want. So we kept saying 7 movies. I have 7 movies written down.
Okay.
But I did not include Meet the Feebles.
What?
I included They Shall Not Grow Old.
The documentary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I failed twice.
Yeah, we should really discuss what the movie list is when we do these. We kind of just assume that we're capable of reading the IMDb page, but I have failed many times to read all of the movies on the IMDb page, and
I just failed as well.
All right. Well, we're keeping each other accountable. We'll figure it out as we go.
Oh,
but anyway, Bad Taste.
Bad Taste.
So
I've
seen it before. I was so excited for you to see it because I think this is the first time you've ever seen it. So I can't wait to hear what you had to say. But the main thing that I love about Bad Taste, not only the effects, like I already mentioned, but for a 90-minute movie, a lot happens in it. Like, it's pretty amazing.
You were very excited about that. When did you bring this up? It wasn't that long ago.
It was basically my entire reason for wanting to do a Peter Jackson episode.
That's right. Yeah, it was when we were planning out.
Yeah.
You were really excited, and then I read the synopsis, and it is one of the goofiest, this is what the movie's about?
Yeah. just looking at the cover of the movie is, my favorite, because it has, this weird alien prosthetic thing flipping off the camera with an AK-47. And I was like, this is the kind of movie I like.
Yeah, it's I was really excited to watch this. I think this was the first one that I watched when I finally had time.
Nice.
By getting back into town. I kind of had an idea what it was going to be like going into it, just off of the fact that, Dead Alive, I'm such a huge fan of Dead Alive. So I imagined another comedic horror film from the guy that did Dead Alive.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, there's going to be some gross things in this movie, some very weird, over-the-top acting,
Mm-hmm.
and just goofy practical effects that are going to be very entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I was not let down.
Not wrong.
Right from the get-go, I get all of it.
Yeah.
And, I'm just going to also say, chances are we're going to be saying some spoilers because there are some scenes that I want to talk about in a lot of these movies that are spoilers. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Heads up. If you haven't watched these early or any other Peter Jackson film, stop now, go watch them, and then come back and listen/watch us.
Yeah.
Or if you don't care about spoilers, I guess, boo on you. But
yeah, exactly.
Another fun thing, I caught myself doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I get really excited about the Peter Jackson cameos. I'm always curious, where is he going to pop up? And when I started Bad Taste, I was like, did he start his whole career by cameoing in his own films? Or was that something that he developed a little like in his next movie?
Yeah.
Or his third movie, I guess, technically, because I failed and didn't watch Meet the Feebles. So, he gave himself like an actual role.
Yeah. Well, when you're
Bad Taste,
when you have a very low budget and he has several different actors in this movie. He has an entire alien army in this movie, but he does give himself like an actual character he's not like a main character, but he's definitely has things to do.
Yeah. He's usually grunting and walking or running towards the camera.
Yeah.
Or hanging by his leg off the side of a cliff.
Yeah, that whole sequence was very like impressive to me. That it just like it cemented for me the risks you take as a like early on filmmaker when you don't have OSHA or anybody on your back.
Right.
Also, you're in New Zealand, so you don't have American like things. But
seeing one of your like primary characters and you,
the director of
on
the film,
edge, right, on the edge of a cliff, and I thought that same thing where I was like, I think this is so low budget that they did not have like. I think the prep for this scene had to have been, don't fall.
Yeah.
You stand still.
I watched the scene so closely because I was confident. I was like, he must have not actually taken that much of a risk. It must be camera tricks or a weird angle or something to make it look like a more steep cliff than it really is. I was like, the more I watched it, I was like, this is a real cliff. Like he's actually just dangling off the side. Yeah, this is not that safe at all. It's
a bad idea. It's a very bad idea. Hey, kiddo, can you do me a favor? Can you turn the AC on? It's getting a little warm in the place. The sun must be coming out.
That's Texas for you.
Just flip it down. Thank you. Yeah. Actually, today was kind of a cooler day earlier. It was only like 88, so
nice. Only 88.
Only 88. So watching Bad Taste immediately, I love not knowing anyone in Bad Taste and not knowing anyone in Dead Alive. I know that was a huge appeal to me.
Yeah.
Of just like, I have no context for who these people are. I was so excited about that with Bad Taste. I really wish I could, like, I wish there was footage to go and sit at the table read, you know, or to see him pitch it to his friends, or to the whatever studio it was that produced it, and being like, it's going to be aliens making fast food, but with humans.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things. Also, is that the story is an interesting idea, and it takes a while to unfold. So
it takes a long time before you just like are told.
You're dropped into it following this guy. You don't even know who he is, or if he's good, or if he's bad, or what the deal is. And then, but yeah, as soon as that so there's like an alien invasion, and these aliens have all inhabited like human bodies, and they've all decided to wear blue button-down shirts, which is really funny. It seems like a budget thing to be like, well, we can't put everybody in prosthetics, let's just make you look uniform. But when that first alien, which is kind of like an alien zombie guy, is like following and chasing him, and he like that the guy is chasing shoots him in the head, and you see his like brains go everywhere. I'm like, okay, this is a cool fucking movie because it has like some cool gore in it. But yeah, it's I don't even know where I was going with that. What were you talking about? All of the like
I don't know.
The conglomerate. So it takes a while to get to the point where you realize the people you're following are good guys. They're like this secret task force that's given every authorization by any means necessary to protect Earth and also the moon, which is a funny line.
Yeah.
And they're trying to infiltrate or hunt down these aliens who are basically like McDonald's. They're like a super corporation that's trying to make food as cheaply and disgustingly as possible, and they've decided to come to Earth to harvest humans to make them into fast food. And and it's great.
They haven't taken like over all of New Zealand.
Yeah,
they've taken this tiny village, and like the village is empty. You see the guy running around trying to hide from them.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the funniest like cuts and editing. It makes it so entertaining. He's on the radio with some guy who's watching everything happen. I forget that character's name.
Yeah, I don't remember any of their names, honestly, but the guy on the radio is great.
That's fair.
And
the guy on the radio, I was so distracted, but in a good way, because I just loved it.
Mm-hmm.
His radio setup. I loved the whole like,
it's like
how it sticks out. Yeah. But it doesn't droop. It hangs freely, and it sits perfect so that he can just talk directly into it at all times. And I was like, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Until you have to hold something, but that is brilliant.
It reminded me of, I don't know if you've ever seen those like photos of like old timey switchboard operators.
Yeah,
and
100%.
Those big like metal contraptions that would like hold a microphone,
and the microphone
right here,
came up right
the
there.
earpiece speaker right here. It's basically that.
Yeah, but way cheaper made.
Yeah.
And but it was so fun watching that and just seeing like, you could tell him being first time behind that camera, first time like creating this film. I'm sure they only did a few takes per scene. I can't imagine they ever did more than like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Just judging off of how the actors reacted to their environment. But I do like, there's a lot to it, and Peter Jackson does this pretty well. And it's got to have something to do with the fact that he filmed in these smaller villages in New Zealand, where you do get the sense of like, if this wasn't made to be a comedy, this could legitimately be kind of freaky just based on, I have no clue where this village is. I have no, like, the village it genuinely looks foreign, even though they're driving like normal cars and they're doing normal things, but the setting is really interesting to me. And I felt the same with Dead Alive, where it was like, man, these sets, these villages, like if something bad happened in these villages, I feel if it wasn't a comedy, this would be kind of a daunting thing, because you feel like I have no clue what anything is. I have no clue how I would actually get around, where I would go. I kind of like that a lot. And Bad Taste does a fun thing with that, where he's like, the whole village is empty. He tries to hide in a shack. Of course, you're going to run into a pitchfork.
It does such a good job of. So I feel like most of the feel is that serious paying homage to like B horror movies. It's like if a film student wanted to intentionally make a B horror movie, it would be like this. But I think it does such a good job of not trying too hard. A lot of times when people are like, I want to make a B horror movie, they try too hard and it just feels forced. This feels genuinely like a good horror movie that is at the B level just based on what it is.
Yeah.
And then they also do put in a good amount of like jokes. Like it does feel like we're trying to just have fun with it, and you wouldn't know where it is other than a couple of like localized jokes about like, they're like, oh well, these aliens are going to take out Christchurch and they're going to take out Auckland. Well, we don't really care about Auckland, and so they're like,
right.
Everybody in like that area probably feels like that big city sucks, but it's a really just if you like B horror movies and especially prosthetics and things, it's such a fun movie.
It is. It's so much fun, and it did feel. And I couldn't find anything on like IMDb or all the other like production note pages and stuff, but I couldn't find it. But it really felt like kind of his New Zealand homage to Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, totally.
It felt a lot like that right from the get-go, which made me just like even more giddy. I love the odd pacing. I love the odd timing of all of the stuff in his early work, because it works so well to tell the story he's telling you.
Yeah.
And I love that in Bad Taste, you're in the village, but the village is empty because everyone's dead. But the sets are primarily like on that cliff coastline, and then the giant house.
Yeah.
Like, this is where you are. And I also couldn't help but think while watching this movie, I can't remember the name of the short film we watched, but it reminded me a lot of that really cool short film that we watched for Wandering Lions, which is kind of suiting that they're back with us.
Are you talking about the one with the like ghosts, invisible like alien?
Where they
people?
where they go and raid that like that cult house?
It's called Overlord.
Overlord, thank you. I kind of want to hear from the Overlord folk.
Yeah.
If Bad Taste may have had any influence on them just for the basic idea of like this secluded home, and you have to go and like you're the special forces unit that has to go in and eradicate.
They do get like totally kitted up in like special forces type gear and ski masks and machine guns, and it's very like 1987 like the Navy SEALs movie or Jean-Claude Van Damme or something. But I could totally see the parallels there.
I would just be curious to hear from the Overlord for folk. Have you ever watched Bad Taste? And if you did, was that in any part kind of like a not inspiration, but did it feed any ideas kind of thing? But anyways, you get the like the headshot at the beginning with the stalker alien guy chasing the one dude, but then you see when the guy falls off the cliff and splatters.
There's a lot of gross brain matter things that happen in this movie. So they took a lot of time to make brain pieces effects look so
brain
gross.
Matter is awesome. And I gotta wait because we got a little ways to go before we get to it. But there is one part with the brain matter that I was like, my favorite part of the movie is right there. Like, I was so excited about it. You could probably guess which scene it was. We'll get to it in a little bit.
Is it the one where he's scooping it out of that guy's head with a spoon? He's like sitting there eating. Oh.
No.
Yeah.
But that seems pretty great.
We might as well get into it. I mean, we're not going to talk about the whole movie. We have 7 movies.
Right. It's just, there's so many little fun things throughout the movie. You know, the special forces, I loved how they're genuine friends, just BSing as they're taking out this alien horde in the home. I love this. I feel like this was a moment where their budget, like, crap, we can't afford another, like, and I don't know all the names of the guns, so you'll probably have to help me out here. But, you know, the one guy is using what looks like a standard handgun that you see in a film, especially from like a 9mm or whatever.
Yeah.
But then the other guy pulls out a freaking 6-shooter.
Yeah.
And is like blasting away with it. I loved that. Absolutely. I was like, could you not afford another 9mm? And you just found like this antique 6-shooter or like what?
Yeah.
Either way, I am all for this guy carrying this gun.
Yeah. I really enjoyed all of their like prop guns. And I really thought it was kind of funny, maybe a little ironic that because New Zealand is very much like Australia, where they're like guns have been banned for ages there.
Yeah.
But it's obvious that Peter Jackson has taken a lot of like influence from American cinema, where you just have like, it's cool to have machine guns in movies. And so his movies, even like a bunch of his early movies have just like people that just pull out machine guns and start blasting away. And it's a lot of fun, honestly. There's also in like a very New Zealandy way. There's a part, and it kind of reminded me of Flight of the Conchords because mostly their accent, I think. But
well, it's all New Zealand.
Yeah, his accent was when there's one special forces guy or task force guy that's like, "Have you ever been in a gun battle before?" It just made me laugh so much.
Yeah, I found myself laughing a lot during this movie, especially one of the scenes that got me cracking up quite a bit, and I quoted it to my daughter because I was telling her about Bad Taste, and she was just like, "What are you watching, Dad?" It's hilarious. But I told her, like, so it's in the house when the whole like plot is finally revealed, and you got your like corporate leader alien guy in his suit with the bowl of green goo that has brain chunks in it and like human chunks in it.
Well, the bowl is created when this one alien who's like the chef vomits it all into the bowl for them all to eat.
Yeah. And they don't use spoons. They don't use any utensils. There's no glasses. They just tilt the bowl. And it might be the grossest sounding slurping sounds. That was a lot of S's.
Alliteration.
There's some alliteration for you. Like ever put on film. I can't believe we did not see any of them break character and start laughing out of like, because like I said, I am a firm believer they did not do several takes.
Yeah.
And this is a scene I'm like, I would have ruined this whole scene.
Yeah.
I probably would have been kicked off of set because I would laugh every time.
Yeah, and especially with those like low budget movies, continuity is so hard to like, okay, if somebody messes up, we have to get the bowl back to the same level. It has to look like it's not been drunk out of all this stuff. You don't have to have like, if somebody had it on your face, you have to get rid of it, that kind of stuff. And I love how they edit that scene. It must have sucked to edit that scene, but they did such a good job of making the tension drawn out as this one human guy who's standing there in a blue shirt pretending to be an alien realizes
the
what's
shirt is
on and
covered in blood.
Yeah, his shirt is covered in blood. But he's standing there. He didn't expect this to happen. And all of a sudden, this guy vomited into a bowl and everybody's drinking it. And that's the weirdest thing ever. And now it's being passed around and it's coming towards him. And he's trying to like get away from it, but he knows he has to drink it. Otherwise, people will know that he's not an alien. And just the tension for that whole scene, I love it. It's so fun. And disgusting.
It's not like it's not a scary tension or like a real stressful tension. It's just a gross factor of like, he's going to have to drink this. Like, he's going to have to consume it. But I love the line where, like, the corporate guy, after he slurps a couple times and it's all over his face, and he passes the bowl around, he's got that great line. This is where I just, like, I cracked up. He sounds so excited. He goes, "Ooh, I got a chunky piece." I lost it. I was laughing so hard when he said that. I kept watching all of them as they slurp, like, who's chewing? Who's chewing? And then it gets to the human, and I was like, you know, the giggles were kind of winding down. He slurps it, and you're like, that's so gross. And then he goes back eagerly for another swig, and I was like, right back up there with the giggles. Yeah, he got excited about drinking alien vomit, human goo that's going to get processed into intergalactic fast food.
When it's good, it's good.
What better movie synopsis is there? Tell me.
So I was trying to like synopsize these movies, and so much happens in them. Like from where they start to where they end, so many things happen. I was like, it's impossible to really say what it's kind of about. So yeah, that's as good as any. That little synopsis pretty much sums up what you're going to expect. It's gross.
It's so freaking funny. I loved Bad Taste. I was so excited to tell you that I loved it. It was really hard not to text you immediately after watching it to be like, I love this film.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved it. I want to try and find a physical copy of it and get it ordered.
Yeah.
That way I've got like my Peter Jackson collection.
Mm-hmm.
But oh my God, it was so good.
Yeah. Well,
So good.
the only like the other gross part you brought up, which we have to touch on, is like the grossest part of the movie for me, because it's so well done for such a low budget movie. The way they do the visual effects and the special effects.
I have to, we got to spoil the ending because this whole sequence to me, besides like the hilarious bold part, but the ending with the final line and just the. I loved it.
When you were doing this to your head, I thought you were talking about the radio guy who has his like skull broken open and he sees his brain. That's not like the end, but yeah.
No. But when he scoops it and like splats it back into his skull,
he realized because he falls down the cliff, the very dangerous cliff that we talked about, and he squishes a seagull. And then we're like, oh, so he's okay. It's just the seagull. And then you realize, well, he's not really okay because his skull has split open and it's like a flap now where you can see his brain inside. And he realizes that some of his brain has escaped. It's on the rock and he has to like pick it up and put it back in for some reason. Like it's going to melt back. And then close the flap like an escape hatch.
And he's got a belt that he ties to his head, and he just like squishes it down with the belt. Yeah. I love that.
It's so good.
But the whole sequence also with the chainsaw at the end, I was dying.
I assume you were dying as soon as you saw him pick up the chainsaw, because that's the part.
Yes.
I was like, I love this movie already. And then he's like, what this movie really needs? A chainsaw.
A chainsaw. And you're like, oh my God, how are you going to make this even better? I totally told my daughter this whole sequence. So I love how like the alien spaceship is just the house. It doesn't. There's not a ship inside the house that bursts through it. It's the full home.
Just lifts off.
Frame foundation. Just into space. I died when he like opens up the circle in the ceiling, and the corporate dude sitting there or standing there. What does he say? He says something to it. I'm back or whatever. And he just drops chainsaw first into the sky. Now, I love Sharknado. That first Sharknado is hilarious. And this segues, don't worry.
Okay.
You already know it does. It segues. I've always loved like the part in Sharknado where he voluntarily gets eaten by the shark to cut it open from the inside. It's hilarious. It's horribly done, but that's part of the like appeal. This might be my favorite thing in that I thought Sharknado was brilliant with it. Now I think Sharknado was like, you ripped this off.
Yeah.
Bad Taste with the chainsaw going through the guy's head, coming out his ass, and the guy like crawling through.
He like squishes through like his legs, slides out, and then looks dead at the camera and goes, I'm born again.
I lost it. I like it. That was one of those scenes I like debated. Do I rewind this and rewatch that scene again? Like, do I stop the progression of the film so I can relive this moment? Yes, I do.
It's so good.
I mean, Bad Taste was so awesome. I feel like it's just one of those films kind of like Killer Clowns for me, where I could watch it over and over again and probably fall more in love with it every time I rewatched it.
Yeah.
I felt that.
Yeah.
I loved Bad Taste.
Yeah, there's so many like little things that you kind of miss or that happen so fast and you like appreciate it more later on. It's so good.
It's so good. So good.
So the movie you missed, which he released 2 years later in 1989, first one he wrote with his wife, Meet the Feebles, which I had never seen before. I had it for a long time, and I was like, I need to get around to this because I love the Muppets, I love puppets, I love comedies, I love horror, I love all kinds of weird, gross things. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and I saw it for the first time this week. Honestly, I don't think it's possible that anybody genuinely likes this movie. This is the weirdest, grossest movie I've ever seen. I had a great time watching it because it was so weird, but it's not the kind of movie that you like tell people you like. It's a weird fucking movie.
It's one of those. You need to send it to me so I can watch it.
Oh, you've never seen it?
No.
Oh my God. At one point, I stopped taking notes. Well, I was taking notes, but I didn't know. I didn't have anything to say other than just started listing the weird things that are happening on screen. And there are so many weird little things. There's a part where a character has like a Vietnam flashback that evolves into like a deer hunter roulette scene. So the entire movie is Muppets, like full, like some of them are little tiny puppets. Some of them are full bodied, like giant puppet suits, human sized puppet suits. Some of them are even bigger than that. And they're all animals. They're all like characters. They have like a Muppet show style of variety show that they're trying to put on. But you see them have sex. You see boobs. You see boobs a couple times. One of them has like their dick and balls out. There's like one of them, like a little weasel, is like low key shooting porn in the basement of this like studio theater.
What the heck?
So there's like BDSM cow Muppet porn happening in the basement of the studio. One of the stars of the show is a rabbit, and he has a lot of sex, obviously, because he's a rabbit. That's what they do. But he is told or learns that he contracts AIDS, so that's really fun. There's a guy who was doing yoga, and then he falls and forces his head to get stuck in his ass, like he just like a weird yoga thing. That's really funny. There's a Scottish punk, like punk rock warthog playing golf, like seriously playing golf. That's weird. There's a full song and dance number just about sodomy.
What the heck?
Which the audience does not appreciate. The audience kind of just there's crickets at the end of it, which is funny. There's a chicken has a love child with an elephant at one point, and then some weird stuff happens. But my favorite part, and the part that's the cover of the movie, which I was waiting for it to get to this point, because up until this point it's just kind of weird, gross stuff. But then there's the star of the show is this hippopotamus, who is a little bit older, a little bit washed up. The main producer of this variety theater show decides to force her out. And so she gets really pissed off, pulls out a giant light machine gun and just starts mowing people down.
What the
Kills tons of characters. At the end of the movie, only gets 10 years in prison, so it's pretty funny. So that's like 10% of the movie. Like there's so much weird shit in this movie, and it's gross, and it's like the kind of movie that I will send it to you. I can't believe that it exists or that anybody likes it, but I really want to hear what you say. So you will have to do an update episode after you see it.
Yeah. This feels kind of like, or sounds kind of like the same basis of like Walrus, or you told me about another really weird one a while back that you were like, you have to watch this movie because I have no clue how to describe it. And it was another ridiculous kind of film.
Okay.
I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
Shit.
It is.
Man, we've watched so many movies, but
it is on in the vein of the weirdest movies that have no genre and have no the concept of what they're going for.
Is it bad? I'm not too worried that I won't find it entertaining or kind of get a kick out of all the the grossness and ridiculousness, just because I have come to learn people kind of look at you weird when they find out that you like the movie Sausage Party. So this kind of feels like it'll be my new Sausage Party, where I'll probably find it entertaining. Yeah. And I'll tell people about it, and they will give me a look of like, you liked that movie? And I'll be like, yeah.
If they even know what
but I'm curious.
If they've even heard of it. But I would say this one-ups Sausage Party. Sausage Party is tame compared to this. So anybody who thinks that Sausage Party is good, like, obviously it's good, but anybody that thinks that it's one of those weird movies, you ain't seen nothing yet. Go see Meet the Feebles. Yeah. It's weird.
We're gonna do a follow-up on this one. I'm gonna get this one watched. My curiosity has peaked.
Good. Good.
If it's a movie that gets you to be like, oh my God, I feel obligated that I have to watch it, and now I feel bad that I did not get around to watching it. So send it to me.
Yeah.
It's getting watched. We are doing a follow-up.
All right.
Have to.
We will let you know
have to.
On our YouTube channel when we do the follow-up. So look out for that.
Yeah.
So Dead Alive, filmed in 1992. Yes. Also known,
originally titled Brain Dead.
Yeah, also known as Brain Dead. I think you'll probably find it under Dead Alive. That seems to be its name now.
This movie, I mean, we've said it earlier, it is known to be the bloodiest movie of all time. They used over 300 gallons of movie prop blood. Most of it comes down in like a scene. But Dead Alive, so I remember hearing so much about this movie. I had an older cousin who he was the cousin that got me into Clerks, introduced me to a whole bunch of music and all that. He constantly talked about Dead Alive as well, in the same like vein as Evil Dead, just constantly telling me these are staples. You need to see these. And obviously I fell in love with Evil Dead, and it took a little while for me to get around to watching Dead Alive, just because it was a little harder to come across when I was younger. But I remember, so I saw it when I was in high school, when I worked at that video rental place. I saw it at the store and was like, we're watching this. Like, oh my God, it's here.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend at the time, I convinced her to watch it with me, even though she hated horror, really had no desire to watch it. But, you know, you're in high school and you deal with each other's whatever ridiculousness.
You also often have literally nothing better to do.
Right, because you're in high school and you can't make out all the time. So
right.
So I convinced her to watch it with me, and we're watching it. And I remember we were both kind of like, what kind of gore and blood is this going to be? Like, for a film to hold that title for so long, like, it's got to be a substantial amount. And then there really wasn't a lot of blood and gore for quite a while. I mean, there was a little bit, but I just remember, and then the final act kicked in. And when the movie ended, we looked at each other and we're just kind of like, what the fuck did we just watch?
It's that kind of gore.
Yeah. But we'll go back to the beginning. I have always loved Peter Jackson's super fun, not even trying to be subtle nod to his love of King Kong, which that's the movie that that inspired him to be a filmmaker, was the 1933 original King Kong film.
Yeah.
And he has preached this film.
I love how they took the opportunity to inject himself into the canon of King Kong and be like, I'm going to set my movie on Skull Island in 1957. This is brilliant.
And I mean, it works. They steal this weird Sumatran rat monkey that has curses, or is cursed, especially if it bites or scratches you. Yeah. And he's stealing. It's this like zoologist who is stealing this rat monkey.
Yeah.
And trying to escape the natives, who might be the world's worst spear chuckers
Right.
ever.
Well, first of all, the Jeep drives away so slowly, but they stop at like that river and throw their spears and like goes to the other bank.
It's like you can tell they were told, don't throw it too far.
Yeah.
Don't throw it too hard. So you can tell
we don't have insurance.
Right. Don't hit the camera. We don't have another one.
Yeah.
Because you can tell they really pull back on their throws where they're like, oh.
Yeah. Oh, it slipped.
Yeah. Love it. And then the guy, like, he gets bit and scratched, and his driver and another native who's with him they see the bites and scratches. And, I mean, it doesn't take long, and you see his hand, his arm get hacked off.
Yeah.
And those, for practical effects, that is some pretty cool looking effects. I like seeing his hand and arm get chopped off. Those are brutal cuts.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
It's also a good joke. It's a funny sequence of events where he's like,
yeah,
I got bit on my hand, and then they pull out this machete and cut his hand off. And then they see that, oh, you also got bit on this shoulder. We need to cut your whole arm off on that side. And then he gets scratched. Like they're like, see,
he's got 3 little scratches on his forehead.
Like, you got to cut your head off. Yeah. It's just a funny progression.
And then the rat monkey still manages to make it to New Zealand. You would have figured they would have
in
abandoned
the zoo.
it.
Like they just in the zoo with all of these other animals. And it is kind of cool. So the rat monkey is like this stop motion animation kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
who looks like a rat.
It's funny to see it after Meet the Feebles, because it's a very different kind of puppet thing where none of those are stop motion animated. They're all just like live action puppets. And so this was a different decision for him to use stop motion, which was interesting to see, I thought. Yeah,
but before we get to the zoo, though, we get to meet our main character, the antagonist, and the love interest, who originally wants nothing to do with the main character, but due to a tarot reading and a very specific way the pens fall on the counter, she falls madly in love with him without question.
Yeah.
But this is one of my favorite. Sorry, go ahead.
She's told by her grandma that she's going to fall in love with him. And so she's like, this is the guy that's meant for me. Doesn't question it. Throws herself 100% into it.
110% into this. She just... Don't you love my dog? I'm here for you. We're going to kiss at the zoo. And he's like, oh. Yeah. But mother. I can't do a New Zealand accent. I'm not going to try one.
That's probably wise.
Yeah. But it's one of the funniest things to me about Dead Alive is the soap opera like music and kind of the way it tells this love story. Yeah, it's so like unfitting to this film, but I love it so much because it's the perfect like, oh, they love each other. Gore. Oh, they love each other. Gore.
Yeah, it's a great contrast, I guess.
It cracks me up every time I watch it. And the zoo part, oh my God. I get excited when the zoo part comes up, not just because of like the stop motion animation with the rat monkey and you get to see it, but the zoo scene is kind of your actual segue. It's your preview to the grossness that's to come pretty shortly after. Like, him tearing the arm off of the real monkey, but like slugging this thing so hard it kills the monkey on impact. Tears the arm, bites the mom, who you hate the mom so much. She does such a great job of you being like, you're a wretched human being. Yeah. You should die in this movie. Yeah. And then she becomes mother.
Yeah. She's so controlling of that guy. There's but there's also kind of like a Norman Bates thing where he's like, resents her and hates her for it. But then after she's gone, he just continues to keep her alive, kind of.
Right. Oh, man. That's such a like. I like that you brought up the Norman Bates thing because their home has a very Norman Bates feel to it.
That's true.
It's like the only house up on a hill behind a gate. Like watching him mow the yard is stressful to me.
Yeah,
like there is no good logistic here. Like whoever built this place should be beaten with a stick.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, but that's a good point. It is like a total psycho house. I mean, literally a psycho house.
Just, yeah. With a lot more comedy than just insanity, but we'll get there. Yeah, I love the transformation because you hear Dead Alive and it's always like called a zombie movie. It is a zombie movie, but the zombie parts of it are played with a lot in Dead Alive.
Yeah.
So watching him try to domesticate the zombies is hilarious. That includes his mom.
Yeah.
As she's like decaying away. She hasn't actually died yet, but she is decaying. When he grabs the super glue to glue her cheek back on, there is like, he doesn't take caution. There is no nicety about it. He just like grabs the flap. Hold still, Ma.
Yeah, I really like it for fans of zombie movies who like seeing new takes on zombies. I think you should check it out because it does new or different things to them. So mostly having to do with the transformation period where his mom does transform into a zombie from being bitten by that spider monkey or whatever it is, monkey,
the rat monkey.
And so she starts to transform, and the way that it happens is so interesting. And she starts kind of just like falling apart and dying over time. And he starts to like he tries to like keep her together and keep her alive and keep her eating normal things. And there's a lot of gross out parts where her body parts fall off into the food and people eat them, or pus gets around.
Yeah, when she spurts her blood and pus into the guy's custard, and he scoops it up and eats it, and you see the blood. Like, by the way, that guy eating the custard before the pus and blood is gross in of itself.
Even it's normal custard, it is weird and gross.
Like the way he scoops it, and like you're like,
calm down.
Who the hell eats like that? This guy.
Yeah.
But then the blood, like the close up of her, like squeezing it, and you see the like into it. His wife is watching it, and then her ear falls off into the custard, and she chews it. Yeah, into her
with the earring still on,
with the pearl earring. It's glorious, and then she spits the earring out.
Yeah,
unfazed.
It's so gnarly.
It's so hilarious. But it's like, it's pretty much what, right after that, that thing's just like, it's almost like Peter Jackson had that thought of, okay, we set up the nicety, you know, we did the beautiful moments. Let's turn the town into zombies.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
It does still follow the main zombie rules where people, more and more people are getting bitten and transformed. And this poor guy is like corralling them all into his house and into his basement, trying to keep them away from people, but also continue to feed them and keep them alive and keep them domesticated, like you said.
So it's 4 zombies that he tries to keep secret, living in the basement, and he tries to feed them normal food. Why? He tries to. But let's list off the zombies. So we've got the mom. We've got some street punk who gets turned into a zombie in a cemetery. We have the nurse who gets really messed up, like. Gross.
She's the one that is the Pez dispenser where her head gets cut in the throat and her head falls back, and there's such good shots of point of view shots where the camera's upside down, you're looking through her eyes as her head is flopped backwards.
gurgling sounds every time.
Yeah.
They are just
when you try to
perfect.
feed her, it comes out her neck, and so he tries just flips her head back and then shoves it down her neck.
And just like shoves it down the neck. Yeah.
Disgusting.
So gross. And then we've got the priest.
Mm-hmm.
And So Dead Alive and trying new things with zombies gives us our first zombie romance.
Yeah, long before the movie Warm Bodies, which you shouldn't see because I walked out of it and it sucks. There was this movie where you get to see zombies not only making out, but having sex.
But they get it on. That's right. Zombies have sex at the dining room table. She is trying so hard to ignore me right now. I hope she's on the phone with one of her friends and heard me say that.
Her friend's like, dude, your dad is weird.
What is wrong with that guy? Yeah. I love that when he tries to separate them, and this is what I mentioned earlier, the nurse tears like imperfect, like triangle POW form, if you will, and rips his lips off.
Yeah. Well, they're like making out, but they're also zombies, so she is biting on his lips and pulling them apart, rips his lips off.
Yeah. And they're like super bummed that they got separated, but they're still like touchy-feely, like, let's still be naughty. You can hear them having sex, and it's...
Yeah. And they very efficiently had sex because she gets pregnant. Has a zombie baby. So before Zack Snyder ripped this movie off when he made the
Army of the Dead
in Las Vegas, and which people are like, oh wow, there's a zombie baby. No. In 1992, there was a zombie baby in Dead Alive. And it's hilarious as this guy takes it out in this baby buggy into
he
town.
Tries to like take care of it as a baby, and then proceeds to beat it against poles, trees, the ground.
Yeah.
He like
I love how he like sees this mom lovingly like rolling the stroller, talking to her baby. He's like, oh, I should do that. So he does it, and then he's like, oh yeah, this is a zombie, and it's like behind a barbed wire cage so it doesn't eat the shit out of me. And yeah, and then it gets out and he has to like just knock it into everything to try to like make it unconscious so it doesn't kill any children or adult women.
And the other parents are watching him beat this baby against everything around him.
Yeah.
And no one responds. Everyone just kind of goes, oh.
Yeah, they're minimally judgmental of like his parenting style. No,
right.
That would kill a real infant. Like this, you should be a little bit more concerned.
And as hilarious as the zombie baby is, it is equally so obnoxious.
Yeah,
and you want nothing more from the moment the zombie baby shows up to the rest of the movie. You want nothing more than that stupid freaking thing to die.
Yeah.
And it just keeps evading death. And you're always like, no, just kill it.
Yeah.
But it runs around laughing and cackling everywhere it goes. You've got the uncle that shows up out of nowhere who's just gross.
Trying to
like the uncle.
He's just trying to prey on the estate, try to weasel his way into the will, basically. But yeah, he sucks.
He does. And then all of a sudden, this village is overrun by zombies, and they are all coming home. And this was, I remember watching it that first time. By the time the zombie baby showed up and all the zombies were kind of like spreading at this point, I remember just watching it and being like, this is such a weird, like, that doesn't even cut. It's such a bizarre movie. Like, I've never seen zombies like this. I've never seen this style. And again, those early Peter Jackson films, the way he filmed back then is so unprofessional, but in the best way.
Yeah. I feel like it was just so different too. Like there were a lot of unprofessional indie movies, but none of them like this. It's so uniquely different. I think that's partly why it's so interesting.
Oh man. But then we get the glorious lawnmower, we get the hacking knives, we get it all. And one of my favorite things of all time, if you ever want to watch a movie that gives you almost the definitive moment of you have to suspend every shred of belief, every shred of doubt, like you can't even, you get rid of it all, you need to get rid of more.
Yeah.
When the lungs come to life out of a zombie. So he's cut in half on a bathtub and all of his guts fall out. And then he's still kicking and his guts come to life. I love the lungs. Love how they're like chasing and trying to like crawl up the dude's leg. And I love the little like coughs that it does.
Yeah.
That was a moment for me of just like, yep, this is absurdity at its finest.
Yeah.
I am so on board with this movie.
Yeah. Peter Jackson does a great thing of continuing to elevate the absurdity or weirdness.
Yeah.
But also it continues to make sense or follow the weird story he's trying to say. Like it's not just weirdness for weirdness' sake. It actually fits the story or the movie he's trying to make, which is weird.
Right.
Weird to say, but it's true.
But it's true. If you put lungs coming to life in any other zombie film or story, it would be like, oh my God, this is so dumb. Like, you just ruined the whole thing. There's no.
Yeah.
But you see it in Dead Alive and you're like, yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go.
That seems like the natural progression for where things were headed.
Yeah.
And then Peter Jackson is like, but wait, there's more.
Yeah.
And then we get the lawnmower. I adore the lawnmower. Just I can't.
I don't even know what to say about it. It's
the
so good.
Lawnmower. It's so
good.
awesome, to the point where, like, if the zombie apocalypse in whatever universe becomes a real thing, I hope someone picks up a lawnmower and just, all right, here we go. It would just make my day.
Yeah. It seems to be very efficient, I must say.
It is crazy efficient. And at the same time that it's very efficient in eradicating these zombies, it kind of like adds a whippiness to their blood. Yeah. And it's very jelly and whipped.
It's whipped. That's accurate.
Yeah, there's so much odd blood and gore during that whole sequence. And you're just like, by the time it finally comes to an end, you are just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I love the half head being kicked around, then being tossed into the blender, and you actually see it like get blended down. I love the zombie that gets attached to the light bulb on the wall.
Yeah.
Gets set on fire. That is actually one of the coolest practical effects in like an early horror film. That is such a great special effect, and it's all practical, which just elevates it for me.
Yeah.
It's so fun to watch. It's so
cool. Effects in this movie, like the other two we've talked about, they're so impressive. They're so cool.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Like,
so creative. Like, I feel like practical effects thrive on thinking outside the box and making weird things work in a weird way. And it just does it. And it works every time. And it's so cool.
Peter Jackson has, or had, I guess, because he hasn't returned to the horror world. I really wish he would.
Yeah.
Not to take anything away from his success now, but I really I, as a fan of his, would love to see him just come out all of a sudden with like, we're going back to horror.
Yeah.
I went back home to New Zealand and made a horror film. I would be there without question. I would be so excited about it.
Yeah, he totally starts getting away from these gory effects movies as
after Dead Alive.
Yeah, and it seems like it would be so cool. I see. Obviously, he loved them. It's what he started out doing. He made several of them, and it seems like something that would be so cool to see him return to, because especially with more modern technology, I would still want the practical effects, but you have like better cameras, better experience. Obviously, he's been through so much. He could make such an interesting, wild, wicked, cool thing going on.
Oh, I would be so for it. So for it. But when he ups the ante on himself, and with Dead Alive is probably the best example of him one-upping himself, because it really is that movie where you're like, what? What?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, how do you get more? And then Mother returns. And every time she shows back up in full transformation, dude, it is, I find something new on her every time that I'm like, I can't look away from that. I can't, like, why didn't I notice that before? The giant boobs, man. The giant boobs. They're so gross.
Boobs. They are gross. They're wicked gross.
They're so gross. Him getting swallowed. Go watch Dead Alive.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to describe what Mother looks like, what her transformation is. You need to just go watch Dead Alive.
You've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, if you're a horror fan and you have not watched Dead Alive, you're doing yourself a major disservice to the genre and to Peter Jackson as well. Like, this is such a great, and considering it was his last venture into gory comedic horror, he does one more comedy horror, couple movies away from this one, but it's so different.
Yeah.
And it's really the start of like his dive into mainstream and into the CGI special effects. He kind of starts letting go of practical effects after that. But man, Dead Alive, I get excited. Like, there are so many times, every time I end up watching it, I'm usually struggling, like, what do I want to watch? And I'll see it there, and I'm like, we're going to watch Dead Alive. Like, it's just one of those movies for me.
Yeah, I've never heard about it until you listed it a long time ago. I think it was in your top 10 horror movies or top 10.
Yeah, it was either in my top 10 horror or guilty pleasure. It was one of those, I'm pretty sure.
That could be.
Or at least an honorable mention.
Yeah, you brought it up, and I was like, that sounds incredible. And then I had to get it. And yeah, loved it. It's amazing. Go watch it.
It's so good. Please go watch Dead Alive.
So, 1994, Heavenly Creatures, starring a very young 19-year-old Kate Winslet. I think it was her first movie.
It is. It's her first feature film, along with the other actress who, like a horrible person, forgot to write her name down.
You've seen her before.
Technically the main character of the film.
And you've seen her in a bunch of other movies. Like, I can remember her in all kinds of different movies. Her name is just less common.
Yeah. As we both try to quickly bring up IMDb to look it up.
I'm going to race you to it. Director, Heavenly. I should just search for it.
Melanie Linsky.
Melanie Linsky.
Phew.
And everybody will be like, oh, yeah, Melanie Linsky.
God damn it.
Bless you.
Yeah, so people would know her from... Oh, man, she's done a lot of stuff that I have not seen. Okay, this is a long scroll.
She's been in a ton of stuff. Like, I see her a lot.
Lots of stuff. Wow.
Yeah.
Holy crap, she's been in way more than you would actually think.
Yeah.
Dang, but what do I know her from? She was in Perks of Being a Wallflower, Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. I don't remember what character she was in that one, but now I want to rewatch it to see her again.
Yeah.
Up in the Air. That's a sad movie. Anyway, you know her. When you see her face, she's that kind of actress where you're like, oh, her.
Yeah.
It was both of their first feature film.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of, I know her from Ever After. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
She plays one of the stepsisters.
She's like the nicer,
an evil stepsister. Yeah.
Yeah, nicer stepsister.
Anyway, so Heavenly Creatures.
Yeah, when I didn't know anything about it, based on a couple of stills that I'd seen, I assumed that it was like this lesbian love story. And then as I was watching Peter Jackson's earlier movies, I was like, there's a lot of like gore in those movies, so it can't be that serious or that like, dramatic. And so the opening of the movie, and it's not entirely unfounded, but the opening of the movie when they're like running through and screaming and they're covered in blood, and I was like, okay, this could be a pretty cool movie. And so I liked the opening, and I felt like it was also definitely a massive jump in quality from the first three movies.
Well, it was like he completely abandoned comedy.
Yeah.
And went with a very serious story that is true. I did not realize this movie is like, no, this is the actual case, down to so the movie was made out of diary entries.
Yeah.
And court testimonies. They filmed on almost all the actual locations where all of the setup, all of the actual crime happened. The only place they didn't was they moved 100 yards from the actual spot where the crime happened because they felt very uncomfortable filming on the actual spot. But that path is the actual path where it happened.
Yeah.
And
so I did the same Googling you did because I didn't know anything about this movie. And then I watched it and I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. And then it introduces how Pauline is starting to make these diary entries. She gets a diary or whatever, and she starts making diary entries. And then I get to the end of the movie and it starts talking about like this crime that occurred. Well, you see the crime happen, and then it starts talking. It starts talking about what happened after and how they weren't ever allowed to see each other again and all this stuff. And I was like, wait, this must be true. This must be like the New Zealand version of Thelma and Louise, who are like these criminal masterminds who are best friends. And and it is just the most insane thing. And then I was like, oh, the journal entries must have been like used in court testimony as like evidence. Because it's presented like these are all exactly true, how she wrote them, that kind of thing. I was like, this is so fascinating.
Yeah, like the narration from the diary entries are verbatim from the diary entry, which I thought was like, this is insane. How do they have, like, I don't know what New Zealand's like laws are for these records or like all this stuff, but and I mean it did take place. What year did it take place in?
Good question.
Oh crap! I forget what year it was. Anyways, it took place a long time ago. So you kind of feel like, well, records have to be available to the public at this point. But yeah, the story's a little crazy. It's kind of uncomfortable to watch for so many reasons.
Yeah,
I don't think there was really a character in the whole film that I was like, you're a decent person, you don't deserve the circumstances. Everyone in the movie, I was like, you all are just bad people.
Yeah.
And you're raising bad children.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, you kind of,
oh my God.
As shitty as the two main girls are, Kate Winslet and the main girl, Paulina, what's her name? As shitty as they are, when you see their parents and how they raised them, you're like, I kind of get it. Like,
Yeah.
This one girl
Like,
is like
I'm not-
kind of just abandoned in the hospital for months on end while her parents do whatever because they don't want to deal with it. And this other girl, her parents just leave randomly for England. They live in New Zealand. They go to England for like 8 months out of the year, but for just like work. And she's supposed to stay there and go to school. And I'm like, this is shitty. And I totally get why you are a maniac who wants to kill your mom.
And it's like, I'm not justifying any of their actions, but it's a pretty telling story of a possibility of when you neglect your children,
right?
Or when you don't just like listen to your children.
Yeah,
like, I feel everything that happened in the movie could pretty much have been averted had there just been like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah,
like a little support all across the board. I feel could have been the turning point for several things.
Yeah, any attempt to make just to kind of check in and be like, hey, what's this thing that you're into? I can tell you're really having fun hanging out with this girl, listening to this guy's records, like coming up with these fantasy stories, like all this stuff. Any sort of connection there probably would have saved their mom's life from getting absolutely bashed
obliterated.
Yeah,
which they toned the crime down. Did you read what the actual crime was?
I knew that. I could tell that they were trying to tone it down based on So when she actually starts killing her mom and bashing her brains in with the brick in a stocking, they kind of cut to an idealized version. Like they splice in like a dream or idealized version of like their life and their fantasy of what it would end up being, but then it cuts back to like the very real, gruesome, brutal parts. And so I could tell that they were trying to alleviate. If you just focused on that murder, that would be so brutal. But
and I mean,
go back
just what you see, just the act of the murder is like, this is hardcore. This is not a like. There's no quick kill right here. This is a drawn out process.
Realistic.
Yeah, like this is not pretty.
Yeah.
I do want to say I think this was a huge film also for Peter Jackson to flex his skills on showing fantastical worlds. And maybe this is your connection of he gets a very specific vision for these fantasy settings. Yeah. And he has a great talent for actually bringing those settings to life in terms of heavenly creatures. He actually brings these clay figures and this story that they're writing. He brings it to life through their imagination and through their eye. It's really cool to watch how he does that, incorporates that into the real world and vice versa. I thought it was actually like really brilliantly done.
I agree. I think that all those parts. So the main story about these girls that have this like friendship and it evolves into supporting each other into doing this murder. That's interesting. But the added directorial decisions to add the fantasy elements that you're talking about, where he brings in, they like these singers, or they like these, they make these little clay figures of these saints that they call, they're like, they're kind of like idols or characters that they enjoy making part of their lives and imagining them being real.
Yeah, and they insert themselves into the fantasy where they call each other by their character names, and everything is always revolving around this fantasy story that they're creating. I think it does a good job because they remind you in the film that the girls are like 14 years old when the events, like during this time period. Well, 14 to, was it like 2 years after they meet is when the crime happens. So they're like 16 years old, 14 to 16. It's kind of a good way to remind the audience, like, they are children. They still do not have an understanding of how the world actually operates.
Yeah.
And it does such a great job of inserting them into the fantasy and making them be like, well, if we can just make our fantasy a reality, then we're going to be totally fine.
Right. Yeah. They're totally still just playing, just trying to have fun. And it reminded me a lot of those. I don't know if you know anything about those girls that were involved in the Slender Man murder,
Yep.
where they just have no concept of reality, completely cut off from, and completely, and just believe the fantasy so much. And this seems adjacent, at least, to that. But yeah, it's so interesting how their kind of friendship is, and the way that he shows the fantasy and these characters come to life. And it was also really fun. We talked about black and white movies a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about The Third Man starring Orson Welles, but they showed in this movie, and I was like, man, that movie is so cool. And the way that the shots and the lighting and the imagery, the Third Man is such a cool movie. But yeah, the way that they the Orson Welles character starts chasing them around, and they start screaming and pretending to be chased by him and pretending to be in danger, and then just having fun with it at the end. It's really interesting.
Yeah, his eye for putting the characters or the settings or whatever in such a position where you as the viewer, you are not just watching it, but he really does a great job of inserting you into all of it as well. So the way the camera's moving through all of the clay figures who are still clay.
Yeah.
Which I always thought was interesting, but they're still he's moving through it as if you are kind of bumping around people to try and get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
He does some really cool things. And I think it's kind of incredible. There's only a 2-year jump between Dead Alive and Heavenly Creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And you see just this huge shift in just the filmmaking. This dude learned a bunch of stuff in his previous films, and now he's up in the ante on himself, but not in terms of, ooh, how can I gross things out? Now it's how can I challenge myself to tell a more complicated story, or how do I use the camera to show you one side of one thing? He does a really good job of doing that. And I think that's his new career one-upping, because he continues to do that.
Yeah.
With all of his movies.
Right.
So you got to give the dude credit. But yeah, Heavenly Creatures kind of took me off guard. I'm like you. I had never watched it before, and I kind of always assumed it was just going to be some weird love story that was just going to feel off.
Yeah.
And I mean, it kind of is, but finding out what it was actually about, how close it was to, I guess, what actually happened. And they used the diary entries as their main source, which has caused some controversy, because the other girl has always maintained there was nothing sexual about our relationship. But then Pauline is that's all that ended up becoming was sex and plotting murder. So I think it's kind of interesting. I don't think we'll ever actually, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But I do think it's interesting that Peter Jackson received his first Academy Award nomination, though, for Heavenly Creatures for best screenplay. Yeah. I thought that was kind of cool. And
starting
that's
to make waves.
Stunning. Yeah, that's quite the wave to make.
Yeah.
Especially coming off of B indie New Zealand horror comedy. So
yeah,
I think that's pretty cool. And I caught myself trying to see the shooting style evolve.
Yeah.
To where kind of what we saw peak in Lord of the Rings. I was waiting for where are these shots? Where does the camera movement really start kicking in? And there are subtle things that you can see here. There's a few little things in the Frighteners that you can kind of this looks like kind of the beginning of what you were learning.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. I'm still thinking because there's a 6-year gap between Frighteners and Lord of the Rings.
Between Frighteners and Lord of the Rings, there's a 5-year gap. The first one was released in 2001, and Fright Nights was in 1996.
Okay, so a 5-year gap, and that in that 5 years is all Lord of the Rings development. So I think that's kind of cool
because
and crazy.
They made them all back to back, and so you had to, and they released them 1 year apart, which you don't really do nowadays. You generally release one, see if it works, wait a couple of years, and then if it works, start the next one. And so they're just like, no, let's knock them out. They're ready to go. Release them 1 year apart, and so obviously that took time to get ready, do it all, film it all, do it. It's kind of crazy.
It was, but yeah, I enjoyed Heavenly Creatures more than I guess I anticipated.
Yeah, I would say the same. It was kind of a surprise how interesting it was. I was more interested than I thought I would be. I thought it would be more dramatic and romantic, but it was more complicated, which I liked.
Yeah, I really liked how he told. Well, yeah, my favorite part was what I said earlier, was just his constant reminder to the audience. They are children who don't actually have an understanding of consequences or have an understanding of reality. But here they are thinking that the parents are the enemy. The parents are the sole problem. Yeah, the parents suck. They're so bad.
For them to think that it will solve everything if you just eliminate your mom is so far from the truth, and you definitely are too much of a child to see the big picture in that sense.
Yeah, they don't see past like the murder.
Right.
I do love how quickly you get told how fast they were caught, how fast it all yeah, we're not messing around with you two girls. This is just how it is. That I was so happy that there wasn't like a drawn out.
Yeah.
Oh, we had to find them. We had to do this. It was like, nope. Found the body. Found the diary. Immediate arrest. So happy about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was interesting how they're like the thing that happens at the end of the text and stuff. It's like one of the conditions of their release is that they can never get back together. They can never see each other again. And it's kind of, I guess, implying that they're a bigger problem if they feed off each other and inspire each other and get into they can kind of like convince each other about this fantasy world and get away from reality, and they're more dangerous that way.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense, because both of them, well, at least Pauline, she's like this mopey early emo version kid.
Yeah.
Who just becomes like so desperately and kind of frighteningly attached to the other girl, but the other girl just kind of feeds off of the attention, and they just kind of like,
if they had never met, it would certainly have just been a sad, awkward girl who was a loner kind of thing.
Right. But anyway. And there's no real good follow-up on the two. Well, one of them ended up becoming like a successful author who writes mystery novels, or did. One of the two. And then there's like, no one knows what happened to the other girl, to Pauline. She's just somewhere.
Yeah.
Or was.
It kind of makes sense.
A while ago.
She seems the most tragic.
But yeah, it was kind of crazy to go from the comedic absurd horror to like a very serious, kind of uncomfortable story, which I actually liked. It was kind of neat to see him step out of the comfort zone. And then he comes right back into the horror comedy, but without the gore now. Now it's like a study in CGI, study in filmmaking almost, but with like, I have a budget, like a big budget. I've got an actual movie star now. This is crazy.
You kind of lucked out in Heavenly Creatures with Kate Winslet, who would be a great movie star, but currently is not. Currently is a nobody. She's a first-time actress. But yeah, well, you get to elevate yourself to Michael J. Fox, which is like a big deal in the 90s, Michael J. Fox. And and it's more of like a family. It is a horror comedy, but it's more family friendly. And I think being produced by Robert Zemeckis, there's certainly that influence of like, oh, this is just a fun, great, enjoyable movie.
And you can feel the Zemeckis like input throughout the Frighteners. I love the Frighteners. I think it's so much fun. It's funny, but it's got some genuine like, oh no, this could be like a legitimate horror film. It's got some pretty heavy topics on it.
And it's very creative. I feel like it lends so much from Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh, their creativity for these fantasy type stories definitely comes through. Oh
yeah. It is just, that's the one that I have playing. I said it earlier. Like there's just something just so enjoyable about watching the Frighteners. And right from the start, it feels like this could be the new Ghostbusters, or this could be like the scam version of Poltergeist, but then things go wrong because it turns out like, oh no, there's a Reaper like going around with the craziest scythe ever. And it's like, yeah, I love watching Michael J. Fox in this because as a kid, I only knew him from like, Back to the Future and oh my God, I just forgot the TV show that he did way back in like the 70s. What was that show? Or 80s, 70s, 80s. Oh, shoot.
I wanted to say Doogie Howser, but that wasn't him.
No, that's not Doogie Howser.
It was
All in the Family?
Yeah, that sounds right, actually. I'm going to say yes.
I think that's what it was. Michael J. Fox. But I love how the use of the ghosts. I love just the comedic version of all of the spirits that are in the movie. I love the graveyard guard is Robert E. Emery. He's like the drill sergeant.
Yeah.
It's so awesome seeing him show up.
Yeah, I really and especially it helps, I think, to have music from Danny Elfman, who always does such joyful, fun scores. But yeah, this concept of this guy who had a near-death experience and now he can see, not just see, but physically interact with and talk to spirits, who needs money and needs to like finish his house that he's never like finished. So he gets these ghosts who are trapped here to kind of work for him and scare people. And then he pretends to be someone who can get rid of these poltergeists and he's just working with these ghosts in order to stop scaring people and makes money off of them.
His scam is like the most obvious scam ever portrayed in a movie.
He barely tries to hide
the squirt gun full of holy water that he just randomly sprays. He holds up his little like video camera and just kind of looks around. Oh yeah, it's a real bad case.
Has the same script every time.
The latex gloves, and then he's got that weird like, what is that thing that he uses? That he plugs it in and it pops out the little baggie, and he's like, "You want a souvenir?" And then he throws it in the garbage disposal, and he's like, "They can't feel a thing," or so I'm told.
My first thought was, won't they get out of the bag if you shred it? Assuming I believe that bag is going to hold them because they can go pass through every physical object.
Right.
But I'm suspending disbelief there, and I'm thinking the bag is special. But yeah, if you shred it, that's bad.
It kind of defeats the purpose, but he's a scam artist. But he comes across like a legitimate Reaper, legitimate hauntings and stuff, and he's like,
this town
he has to do it seriously.
This town is like severely haunted, where people are having their hearts like crushed. They're having heart attacks, but during the autopsy they can tell, no, your veins and arteries are totally fine, totally clean, but for some reason your hearts are getting completely like strangled, basically from the inside, and he has to figure it out. Nobody really knows at the beginning what's going on because every ghost is pretty nice and friendly, and they're just like surprised they're dead, basically.
It's a great movie for like as kids get older and kind of want to see like a ghost story or whatever. It would actually be a pretty good segue into ghost movies because it does still maintain like a goofy portrayal kind of in the Ghostbusters realm.
Yeah.
You know, you do have kind of the creepy ones still, kind of like the librarian from Ghostbusters. And but it does a good job of being a horror film. And Peter Jackson did a really good job of blending a more subtle comedic aspect to it instead of just a blatant absurdity. Now it's like a more real world feel to it almost, you know?
Yeah.
And I gotta love they got the guy from Reanimator to play a detective who is just so freaking awkward and so uncomfortable to watch and be around.
Yeah.
But it's just that Jackson did such a great job. Oh, the credits are rolling. Of just like suddenly you can tell he had a lot of fun with the big budget now, with like an actual producer, with the studio, but how he managed to still maintain the story he wanted, the vision he had for it. He maintained that, even being like this first time big budget filmmaker all of a sudden, you know, like he hasn't been established yet. So I think he lucked out, and I think he really knocked it out of the park, honestly, kind of showing them like, I can pull off some pretty cool things if you just give me the shot. There's your next connection into how he ended up with Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
But
I think he's a great example of a director who has put in the work early on and has the creativity, has the basic fundamentals down of, knows what he wants to do, knows how to do it, figures out how to do it, even he doesn't have all the resources. Yeah. And so as he starts getting more resources, as studios come on board and they're like, oh, hey, you can make this movie, we'll give you better money, you can have better equipment, you can create another great movie, you'll have a better image quality or better effects quality or whatever, but none of the actual creativity or fantasy changes really. He continues that thread or that trend throughout, but it just looks a little bit better as he gets more money.
You know, I have to give a lot of props. So one thing that on the DVD I have, so I have the director's cut DVD, which has like this special introduction from Peter Jackson about making the movie. And it's an amazing kind of behind the scenes. It's like 5 minutes long. And it's amazing. You learn more about general filmmaking and where his career, like with Weta Workshop, kind of began. So he had to buy 35 computers to handle all of the digital effects in the Frighteners. And there's over like 500 digital sequences in it.
Yeah.
So 35 cameras in 1996, they're like the old Windows blocky kind of computers, right?
Yeah.
35 of these things. And in his intro, he's talking about like, it was weird because I knew we were only going to have the computers for a short time or need the computers for a short time, but I have 35 of them to handle the film.
Yeah.
What the hell was I going to do with 35 computers after the movie was over? And that's what he used to help create Weta Workshop.
Wow.
And those 35 computers were some of the computers that he used on creating the digital effects in Lord of the Rings. So it was kind of crazy to be like, you held on to these computers for 5 years and use these old shitty computers compared to what the ones you were given for your production on Middle Earth.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I love that he still maintained like kind of a roots. And I think that's a big thing for Peter Jackson with the fantasy sequences or the fantasy ideas. He's always maintaining his roots and how he wants to tell his story. So he still maintains the swooping shots with the close-ups. You know, he maintains how he blocks certain shots, no matter the scale of the film. He's going to maintain and kind of celebrate his roots in filmmaking. It's so cool watching him do that. And I just think, like, how crazy is it? We went from a comedic ghost story, which happened to be Michael J. Fox's final feature film, by the way, like a live action feature film. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just kind of crazy how 5 years, which at one hand seems like an eternity in between like movies, but also not very much time for him to just blow up the scale. It's just nuts. Of course, he's given us a lot of epics since 2001. So
yeah, I think that's so telling that even it comes through on screen that he does so much with so little. He makes every little thing count and makes it work, and that's come through since the very beginning. He's done more with less since the very beginning. But as you get into Lord of the Rings, it's so cool that he holds on to these computers, continues to use them because I have them, why waste them, kind of thing.
Right.
And then Lord of the Rings is massive, but not that many. I mean, relatively low digital effects compared to nowadays, where you do so much more digital. He does a lot of practical costume, makeup kind of things. And so I think that's definitely sets up his history in the past, sets up his success in the Lord of the Rings for sure.
Yeah. But we're not talking Lord of the Rings today.
Nope.
So we kind of have to skip several years.
Yeah, we go from 1996 to 2005 when King Kong is released. And so he finishes Lord of the Rings, does that massive project, decides to go back to his roots, his first love, as you kind of put it. King Kong was kind of the movie that inspired him to just become a filmmaker, and he wanted to completely recreate it in his style. And honestly, I totally forgot how fucking good King Kong is. Like, when I remember liking it, I was like, this is a pretty good movie. I hadn't seen it in years. I rewatched it this week. I was like, oh my God, this movie is amazing. And mostly because I love, it completely nails the 1930s aesthetic, which I love. Everything about it is kind of just a love letter to the original style of filmmaking.
Yeah, I love that it is a remake. I don't love that it's a remake, but I love that in making a remake, he managed to still maintain the integrity of that very original one.
Yeah.
You could tell the love he had for the character of Kong. You can tell he had the love for that world, that time period. I'm so happy, like, he maintained the monsters on the island. He did change a few things. I mean, he did his thing with it. But it's so cool how he pulled it. I think his version of Kong is actually really, I'm with you. It's so good. It's so intense. And I remember being so excited to watch it when it came out. But at the same time, not looking forward to watching Peter Jackson make King Kong, because we all know how King Kong ends. And I was like, if this dude can just bring audiences just weeping over like excitement or just the feels, you just feel so inspired when it comes to like the Lord of the Rings. Because I mean, all three films are just so inspiring and huge, and they make you question like everything in your life, but in a good way, not a doubting way. You're constantly like, oh my God.
And you so personally connect to every single character that's going through this situation.
And I was like, and we've got Andy Serkis, who's now become like
Yeah.
one of Peter Jackson's go-to guys who's playing Kong, which means we're going to connect to Kong like we never have before. Like, you just knew all these things going into it. And I remember driving to the theater, we had our tickets, and I'm just like, I might tear up. I might get a little dust in my eyes when he goes down. Like, I was a little nervous to see how this was going to happen, knowing that he was going to maintain pretty much exactly how it happened.
Right. Yeah. He understood and connected with the whole original premise. And so why change what's not broken, you know?
Yeah. Funny story about when I saw Kong that first time, or King Kong.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. We have to actually
Kong is a different movie. Kong
is like the alternate universe version of King Kong, where his story does not end on a bad note. Freaking humans. So my girlfriend at the time, we had just gotten back from an international trip, and we got back and it was like, or no, where were we? Because Kong came out around Christmas time, right? I want to say it came around Christmas time. Anyways, we had just gotten back from some trip or whatever, and we wanted to see Kong. I felt like I wanted to see it a little bit more than she did, but she was like, oh, it's animals. This should be like, and it's Peter Jackson. And it's Jack Black in a Peter Jackson film. This should be really interesting.
Right.
So we go to the movie. I was under the impression that she knew the story of King Kong, that she had at least seen like the 1970s version with Jeff Bridges.
One of the most famous movies of all time. Who has not heard of the story of King Kong?
And this is a recurring problem of mine, of just assuming that everyone I interact with has seen every film that I have. And it's always a harsh lesson. I am reminded that not everybody watches every movie they can. Come on, people.
Yeah.
But she was under the impression that this was a completely original idea.
Oh.
Yeah.
That would be a very different experience, probably.
Yes. So we're watching King Kong. And even knowing, like, they're getting off Skull Island, even knowing that, Skull Island is kind of an intense part of the movie. Like, the whole bug sequence in the cave is Peter Jackson's use of, and I've brought this up before in other episodes, old episodes, the use or lack of use of music and sound can be so powerful when you're telling a story. Yeah. And when he cuts all the music and just has that ominous kind of like choir vocalization going on when they're shooting the bugs and the tentacle shit's coming at them and eating their heads, like that scene is still intense for me to watch because it's so well shot. It's so well done.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so we're watching the movie. They get back to New York, and you know how it goes. But I remember sitting next to her, and she, you know, we're holding hands, and I am getting affected because, oh my God.
Yeah.
He upped the ante while maintaining the exact sequences. Very, but there's a lot of close-ups with the eyes. There's a very...
One of the most emotional climaxes in cinema up until that point. And then he definitely appreciates every beat that was great about the original, but is able to enhance it with new, more realistic, more personal connection with this ape that is digitally mastered in a realistic way that you feel and you can see in his eyes his soul kind of in a more realistic and new way.
And he just, oh my God, I can't think of an animal in a film that I have ever felt just that connected to and felt so much compassion and fear and just intense emotion for. That first time when they unveil him and he's chained on the stage, like immediately I remember just being like, oh my God, this is horrific. Are we that horrible of people? Are we all about just exploitation? Is that what we really do? And you're like, yeah we do.
And the entire, like, the push of the movie is so intense, where it's set in the 30s, it's set during the Great Depression, like theaters are closing, actors, all of these people who are in entertainment, which is not that important of a job, honestly. When it comes to life or death or eating or not eating, they are, people involved in that world are now forced into doing everything possible to get eyeballs and get people to buy tickets. And so this is such a sad but true story of how these people will do anything to exploit and become a big name and become popular and sell a ton of tickets because it's so convenient, but at what cost? And it's so incredible in that way.
Yeah, it's Peter Jackson has he has so many talents, but his talent for connecting you on a very deep and personal level with a fully digital character or this fantastical creature. He does such an amazing job of making sure when you look into the eyes of that creature, you're basically looking at yourself. You're basically looking, whether it's like, it's putting your faults up to a mirror, especially with King Kong. You look in King Kong's eyes and you're seeing pain and turmoil and fear. And the mirror part of it is like, I'm part of what caused that.
Right.
And instead of a rational reaction from people, reacting through fear becomes such a huge thing, a part of the story that every time I watch King Kong, I'm constantly like, okay, how do I show better compassion for those around me when they like respond negatively? Maybe there's more to it than just what I'm thinking on the surface. It's crazy how Jackson remade this classic iconic film, but he did it in such a respectful way while at the same time giving it a whole new, like, he just upped it. He upped that ante. He made sure you understood the consequences of human nature, the bad side of human nature. It was, oh my God, Kong's so good. But yeah, when the heartbeat, the whole slipping, the fall, I look over and my girlfriend at the time was just like, it was Niagara Falls, man. There were so many tears and like the credits roll and she's like, what the hell? And I'm like, you knew he was like I wasn't crying, but I was affected by it. But I was like,
you knew it was going to happen
that much. Like I thought, you knew what was happening when we came to see, and she goes, no, how did you know? And that was my clue of like, oh my God, you've never seen King Kong.
They've made several movies about this, and they're all basically the same, except
he dies because people suck.
I think it's such a great reflection of being aware of greed and how your greed affects other people and that kind of thing. But from a movie making perspective, and you touched about it at the very beginning, him connecting with Andy Serkis in Lord of the Rings, obviously amazing. Gollum, not getting into that, but continuing that path into King Kong, where Andy Serkis plays King Kong, and the cook, who is also very good at. I really enjoy Andy Serkis as a live action actor, also. But we're not talking about that. Peter Jackson should be heralded or praised for basically being mostly responsible for great CGI effects. I think up until him and Andy Serkis working together to create realistic CGI effects, they were relatively shit. And you have people who wanted to glob onto them early because they're new and, oh, look how good they are. They're basically realistic when they weren't at all. I'm looking at you, George Lucas. But you have Peter Jackson, who is able to take this new technology, combine it with emotion and heart and realism, and then you can start becoming more you get digital characters that have the weight of realistic practical effects. And so I do think it took someone like Peter Jackson, who was such, from the very beginning, so ingrained in very real, very creative, very grounded, down to earth practical effects, to know how to make digital effects actually work and not feel fake and not feel light and feel real and have weight to them.
He also has this incredible knack. I touched on the like over top kind of soap opera acting from his early films. There is a drastic shift in the quality of acting he gets out of his cast with every movie that he makes. I think King Kong, he draws out very intense performances.
Yeah.
But not through dialogue, which is something I really respect out of how he directs, is that he's not so concerned of all the dialogue all the time. He's very, if you watch, I mean, when you're watching his movies, especially back to back, there are so many close-ups in his movies. I would almost imagine as an actor, it's got to be a little daunting to be in a Peter Jackson film, because I'm not only going to have like an emotional scene, but that camera is going to be right up in my face several times, and he is probably going to find a way to draw something really intense out of me.
Yeah.
I would be a little nervous, but like not like in a good way. Just that's got to be so difficult for an actor to have a camera, zooming in on you or coming up real close, because he doesn't just do like zooms. It is like you can tell, that camera is on the actor. Like,
Well, it starts with being far away, and then you can see it be walked up into their face, and so it's it's right there. Yeah, that was something I was very aware of watching his movies. Not just the editing and the blocking, but he tends to do a very good job of having the camera look at and focus on what he wants the audience to see. And so if he wants you to see a certain perspective or a certain detail, he will show that detail. He will either cut to it or he will zoom in on it, literally push the camera at you to say, this is what you should look at. Look at this person, how they feel. He's so interestingly different in that way.
Yeah, he's definitely a joy to watch. And King Kong, I feel it's kind of like, I feel people have like shit on it or kind of dismissed it because it's a remake and it is 3 hours long. So it's not just a remake of a shorter film back in the 30s. It's like, this is a long movie. And he went from making 88-minute movies to now like 3+ hours.
Well, he learned through Lord of the Rings that you can make as long of a movie as you want, and then completely said, okay, now I make epic movies, and I'm going to take that epic style and apply it to my favorite movie and make it an epic movie that's crazy long.
But I always feel King Kong is kind of the underappreciated film of his fan base, and I feel it deserves way more credit than people, I think, want to give it. Probably
It definitely does. I am guilty of that same thing. Like I said, I remembered it being nice, but being whatever, and rewatching it focusing on it, I was like, wow, this movie is incredible in all the details. And like you said, we skipped over Lord of the Rings where he had a very big cast. This is his first big cast movie. Other than that, he was able to get all of these huge names and make them all work together and get very powerful performances out of all of them in such an interesting way. And I love everybody in the movie. I even love Kyle Chandler. For all you Kyle Chandler fans out there, he's part of the multiverse, for one thing. Before he was in the Godzilla versus Kong monsterverse, he's part of this King Kong verse.
It's true.
But a year before he was Eric Taylor on Friday Night Lights, he was in this movie, and I enjoy him so much as the guy who's like just a handsome, self-obsessed leading actor kind of character, working against Naomi Watts, who it has been a big name forever, but I also think is kind of underappreciated. She shines in this also as such a I just enjoy watching her every time she's on screen.
She is a powerhouse.
Yeah.
I honestly, every time I do watch it, I'm always blown away by it and always kind of reminded of just, this is an incredible scale. And wow, did Peter Jackson just like let his heart out in this movie, which is a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah.
And then I always walk away from it going, man, compared to everyone in this film, this includes Jack Black, who his character, he does such a great job in this movie because he's not your typical Jack Black. He's desperate filmmaker, and he plays it very well.
Yeah.
Who kind of has a very harsh lesson. Like, he's the one that literally has to face his consequence of like, this is my fault.
Bears the brunt of responsibility for sure.
Yeah. So everyone in the cast, I think, is just a powerhouse. But I always walk away thinking Adrian Brody is kind of the weak link in this film.
Yeah, a little bit.
I don't know if it's because maybe I'm just not an Adrian Brody fan.
Yeah.
But
I tend to be medium on him. I think I liked him more watching it this time. I think I had detected certain subtleties in that. But I mean, it's a weird choice, I think, for him to be paired up against Naomi Watts more as like someone that she's interested in and this great writer and all this stuff. He feels more on the level of like Colin Hanks, who's in it, but not saddled with that much responsibility, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why, but every time I'm like, meh. Yeah. Everyone else is amazing. This movie is amazing. Adrian, you're kind of meh.
Well,
but yeah, King Kong. I think King Kong is just a shining film in his career. Yeah. His next one is the one that I actually don't care for.
Oh, hot take. Hold on, I have to take a leak. You hold that thought.
I'm holding the thought.
I've been having to pee for like an hour. Hold on.
That's like half this episode. Well, I'm going to run and do something real quick, too. I'm back. There's just some awkward empty space on our screen for a couple minutes there. Oh, that's funny.
That's funny.
We just got a comment on the screenshot from Bad Taste from our friend Christian. Classic and epic director.
That's true.
It's true. Yeah. So The Lovely Bones.
Yeah. I feel like I know partly what you're going to say. I do like The Lovely Bones, but there are parts that I wish weren't in it because I would like it a lot more without them.
So I rewatched it, and I go back and forth. I know the first time I watched it, I really enjoyed it. I know the second time I watched it, I was a little like, meh, I don't know. And I've only seen it 3 or 4 times. I don't know if this week was the 3rd or 4th time. But I was looking forward to watching it again. Just because he kind of scales down his like epic talent when it comes to like the epic style. He kind of like shrinks it down, kind of like the ships in the bottles a little bit, where he tries to condense a little bit of it.
Nice reference.
Right? That was pretty good, huh?
It was. Yeah.
The world of like, it's not purgatory that you're shown. It's like a heaven waiting area. I don't.
Yeah, I feel like you can call it purgatory. It's the in between life and the afterlife, whatever it is.
Yeah, but purgatory always has like a kind of a negative connotation with it, or it's like, oh, you're stuck. So I'm a little hesitant to call it purgatory just because although she's waiting there to like leave, but it's also her choice. She wasn't forced to stay there. She's
not stuck. She wants to stay there in order to kind of keep contact with the real world, I guess.
Yeah. No, I think the movie, I think the pacing of the movie is actually not that good.
Yeah.
I think it's way slower than it should be. And it just seems to drag out. It's almost like maybe the first cut was actually like, oh crap, we're under 2 hours. And I almost wonder if the thought was, well, we need to push it farther. So how do we extend some of this without making like a director's cut? I don't know. There's just some things about it that I'm like, man, this movie, when I was watching it, I was like, I feel like I've been watching this movie for a very long time. And then I'm like, I'm almost 2 hours into a 2-hour film, but it feels like I've doubled that. Like, I don't know. So it's not my favorite of his.
Is your issues only with the purgatory sequences, or are there any of the
purgatory
sequences?
I think the purgatory sequences are actually really pretty. I love how he combined that visual style with kind of the real world style. I think he does a really good job of that. There's stuff in the movie that I do really enjoy. Yeah. My biggest issue is the pacing.
Okay.
That's really my only issue with the film is just the pacing. I think the narration is a little like, okay, we don't really need the narration, but it is what it is. It's just the pacing for me. That's what throws me off from it.
Yeah, I think I see where you're coming from. Part of the reason I ask is because I really like the real world part. I like the true crime part. I like the murder of this girl part. That's weird to say, but I do. There are parts of the purgatory fantasy part that I like, but there's a lot of bullshit in the purgatory stuff that I do agree with you. I think that the pacing is weird. You waste a lot of time doing a bunch of fantasy CGI effects crap that is kind of boring.
I don't need to see her fluttering through the woods and playing pretend with another spirit. I don't need to see that.
Up and doing weird activities. It's very boring.
It's yeah. I think the heart of the story is how does this family grieve or and grow and move on, which they fail at kind of doing. I want to see more of the family suffering, which sounds weird, but it's
no, but I know what you mean. I kind of feel the same way. My favorite parts are, well, Stanley Tucci is incredible as this like guy who's
Stanley Tucci is so uncomfortable. I hate watching him on this screen,
and he always plays
such
this like he plays such a nice guy normally, an enjoyable character. He's so uncomfortably creepy, and so he's great in it. But I really enjoy his parts, the abduction parts, the Mark Wahlberg and Rachel Weisz trying to figure out what happened to their daughter parts, all the real world true crime stuff I like. Maybe it's because I gravitate to a movie like Prisoners, which is kind of the same story, but in a less fantasy way and more grounded way. And this is much more fantasy. Look at this. And the main girl I like, I was going to Google how you say her name.
Yeah, go ahead and pronounce her name.
I have to Google her name. I Google her name every time I have to say it. I'm pretty sure I'm going to do this from memory. I'm pretty sure it's like Saoirse Ronan. Saoirse. She's Irish. Saoirse Ronan, something like that. I always YouTube it and say, how do you pronounce Saoirse Ronan? But I'm pretty sure that's it. She's good. She's really good, and I like her as this kid, and I like the style of the setting and the era and their costuming. Everything is great. But it's all of the like weird fantasy universe CGI effects and the way that the world like is small and they made their own fantasy world and they do their own activities. It's so it just drags on. And I do agree. I think that's the key to the pacing for me, at least, that I don't mind all the other stuff. I think it moves decently well. You just kind of get bogged down in, we need a beautiful place for her to do beautiful things, and I do.
The visualizations, I mean, it is very pretty. There are some great visuals in this movie, but I think there's too much emphasis on the CGI, and it kind of does take away from the fact that, like, she's this ghost. She's a 14-year-old girl who was murdered.
Yeah.
Like, that's the story, is her trying to move on herself, but also having to watch her family and knowing she can't really affect her family. She can't be there for her family. I want to see more of that. I kind of want to read the book after watching it this time around, because apparently, and I think this also lends to kind of my problem with like the pacing and like what you were saying with the there's too much emphasis on this fantastical part of the story when it should be more of the aftershocks of this crime. The book apparently was written for adults, so apparently it's very dark, it's very brutal. I wouldn't know, I haven't read it, but I'm very curious to read it now. Whereas the movie ended up getting marketed to like a teenager crowd. That was the demographic they aimed for, was more of like teenage girls, young adult girls. And I think that decision to kind of change a narrative completely for a demographic, I think that's why there's so much emphasis on the purgatory stuff, was because they were like, well, if that's the demographic we're aiming for, we have to give them something to be attention getters, because that demographic, no offense, it could be 14-year-old girls or 14, 15-year-old boys. It doesn't matter. A teenager in general, it's probably not likely to sit through a 2-hour grieving fest.
Right. Heavy drama.
Dark and heavy drama, but they will sit through a 2-hour film that's got like a whole spirit world. So I think that's when I read that and found that out, I was like, oh, I think that might have been or is the problem. I think that's it. That I think they changed how do we tell this story? I think they changed the narrative to fit a younger demographic, which I think did the movie a disservice, which in turn, because Peter Jackson did co-write it with his wife and other writing partner, I think this is his first actual stumble. And I wonder, I can't help but think he felt the same way because he has not directed until that documentary. And he's done a lot of producing, but now he hasn't been spending too much time behind the camera. And I almost can't help but feel that maybe he's been having some like, ooh, I kind of tripped up there. So how do I get back? You go back to your roots.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's interesting that the same team wrote Mortal Engines, but didn't direct it. And I don't know what the decision process was for choosing not to. It seemed like such a natural thing to, up until this point, these people have written and he has directed these movies, but that didn't happen.
Right. And I don't hate The Lovely Bones. I just think in his wheelhouse, I think it's the weakest film under his belt. Yeah. Which is kind of sad because it's got a huge cast. I will say Susan Sarandon is my favorite character in the whole movie. Whereas the grandmother is awesome. Great. Yeah. I love her anti-BS. Hey, she's dead. We have to you have to learn how to come to terms. You have to learn how to move on, but you don't got to she doesn't encourage the family to forget about the sister. She doesn't want that. She just wants them you have to continue going because the shitty part of death is everything continues to move forward. Time keeps going. Nothing is going to stop for you.
And she wants them ultimately to not stop taking care of themselves. And that seems to be something that she's been doing for a long time. She's been a single lady who's been taking care of herself. No problem. She's just been a badass. And so I think she's a good influence to come in and be like, hey, pick yourself up. We're going to get this stuff done. Your mom took off. That's a bummer, but let's take care of ourselves.
Yeah. There's a lot of things in this movie too that felt like very big plot holes, which I'm not one to really get hung up on plot holes, but it felt like I had the same feeling watching it this week that I did when you and I went and saw Chaos Walking, where we walked out and it was it feels like there's so much more to the story that just got omitted for the film. And I feel how did we put it where it was they cut out all these details, but then left in the reactions to the cutout details? That's how I feel about The Lovely Bones. So I'm very curious to read the book to find out what those details are. Now, I did find out some details revolving Susie's murder that I actually agree wholeheartedly with Peter Jackson on this decision. So I guess in the book, her murder is described in full detail, and it's not just she gets murdered, it's she is raped and murdered in a very brutal fashion. Peter Jackson refused to put that in the film. And Stanley Tucci flat out said, if that scene is in the movie, I will not play this character. I will ditch this project. Because he was already so uncomfortable playing this guy. Yeah. Rightfully so. He's super creeper. Yeah. So I feel like even if I wasn't a father, I would be okay with that decision where they were like, you know what, we can include this murder and still have kind of the blow to the family. Yeah. The heart-wrenching, news to the family, but we don't have to go into the nitty-gritty of this. I think we can omit that, but still have the same effect. And I think they kind of do. When the family has to, when they get told, when they show her the hat, and then he says, well, there was a lot of blood. That way of telling the family, no, she's gone. Yeah. Stop hoping. It's a pretty powerful, I don't know how I would respond. It wouldn't be well, I can tell you that.
I think it does a very good job of making you feel like the family and making you understand. I don't think you need any of that other detail in order to get the powerful reaction to her disappearing, and what happened and how shitty this guy is and how much we want him to get justice. And I think that there are interesting things with the dad as he's like trying to continue to find closure to this and find the killer. And then I do think there are parts of the fantasy world where she has like interactions or clues or hints. I think that they're interesting directorial choices to tell the story through her perspective as well, without letting everything out of the bag immediately.
Yeah.
So it is a kind of interesting mystery as it goes on. And I remember seeing it the first time. I don't get that so much now. I wonder if I felt this way because I was not paying attention or because I was dumber back then. But I feel like there was a mystery of, is she still alive or not kind of thing. And I do think that came across at least the first time. The second time, it's still a good movie without any of that mystery. You know for sure she's dead.
Like, she's gone.
Yeah. But you still get she wants closure, her family wants closure, and they're kind of sort of having parallel investigations, parallel experiences, and sort of working together in certain ways. And so I think all that's interesting. I think there's just too much fluff in some areas. It would be better without it.
Yeah. There's a lot of good in it. It does not hit me near as much as like the rest of his films. And I think it is all the fluff. I think it is just the excessive use of the purgatory world. I think it would have been much more interesting to see her, kind of interacting on a purgatory level, but still like within reality, or not. How do I word that better?
Like able to influence the real world, kind of like the Frighteners.
Well,
where she's
kind of
still there.
like they kind of hint that she would be able to do that. You know, when she calls out to her dad and he turns because he thinks he hears her voice, but then that's like the last time that's ever kind of shown or brought up.
Yeah.
Kind of more with that, but also we don't need all this super CGI stuff. What would make it more interesting to me is if she was like kind of stuck on Earth, but obviously she's dead. She's a ghost and they're not going to see her, but just trying to like that kind of turmoil of how can I influence the world to direct them? Cause she knows who her killer is. And she's with the other girl, Holly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's several other murdered girls or kids. Yes.
There's this
kind of like a Frighteners movie taken seriously, I think is what you're describing.
Kind of, almost in a way. But it was just, I really feel like it's his weakest one, which kind of sucks because it should have been a really like powerful, just holy hell. So I don't know. I think even like the way he shot the movie, I feel has some like, they're not his style. I don't know. I couldn't find anything because I was looking for like how much interference did he face with this movie? What was going on? Because some of it just doesn't quite feel like a Peter Jackson film.
Yeah.
While at the same time, it felt like a different filmmaker was using the name Peter Jackson to film some of the sequences, like the whole thing where her dad is busting the boats and the bottles, and then they're like all shattering on the beach. I don't like that scene. That whole prom, like, I don't care to see what it looks like in her world. I want to watch this father have this massive breakdown. Like, show me more of this. And
destroying everything he cares about. Yeah.
And I still want a better explanation of why the mom leaves. Apparently that's in the book.
She kind of just disappears, and it's very disappointing because you're like, you still have kids at home, and it makes her look like a total piece of shit because the dad is still there taking care of them like he should.
Yeah. So I felt like there was a less emphasis on the character development and the actual story.
Yeah.
And that part of it was sacrificed for, as you put it, all the fluff.
Yeah.
And I think that is what really messed up the pace and just kind of makes the movie not as impactful for me.
Yeah, the most Peter Jackson parts that I took away from it was the fantasy, creativity, purgatory like visions and stuff of what that looks like and how things work and behave. But yeah, it seemed kind of like Icarus flew too close to the sun. Peter Jackson had too much CGI at his disposal and just decided to kind of go crazy. And it lost the heart and lost the actual meaning or purpose for each individual scene or each individual detail.
Yeah. But if I ever watch again, it's not like I hate the movie. It's just, it was kind of like when it ended, I was like, well, all right. And I was like, I mean, you got more, don't you? And I was like, shit, he doesn't really have anything else right now.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, he was kind of working on The Hobbit after that, then writing Mortal Engines. Then he directed that World War I documentary, They Shall Not Grow Old. And apparently it's announced that he's going to do an Adventures of Tintin movie, which I don't know how that's going to go.
He already wrote that one, though. So he
the original?
It was it was like a Robert Zemeckis style animated film.
Yeah. Well, that already happened, though, didn't it?
Yeah, that already happened. He's got another one?
There's one that's announced. I saw mixed things saying it was either untitled or it was titled Adventures of Tintin, Red Rackham's Treasure. So I think it's like a Tintin sequel or something. But yeah, I don't really know.
His IMDb page ends with They Shall Not Grow Old, and then The Beatles Get Back, which it looks like it's a show.
Maybe I was looking
it's a documentary about the Beatles.
Yeah. So he's been doing documentaries lately. Maybe I was looking at writer credits.
I don't care about that one. No offense to Beatles fans, but I don't care about that one.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, he doesn't have any more director credits.
Are you in the mobile app?
Yeah.
It's not on the mobile app. I'm looking at it too. It was on, at least the other day, it was on the website. Let me look.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Weird.
Oh, it's so early in production. It's only in development right now. That's where it is.
It's just been announced. There's like a couple of rumors about who's in it, but nothing really real that matters.
Okay.
So yeah, don't really know what's coming next.
Oh, there's Andy Serkis, though.
Always attached, regardless.
So
of
I'd be all right with that. I'm curious to know. Oh, that's what it was with that animated one. Steven Spielberg directed it. Peter Jackson produced it. Okay.
That makes sense.
Oh, and now they're switching jobs. So Steven Spielberg is producing this new one, and Jackson will direct it. Okay.
Interesting.
I never saw the animated one.
I don't care about Tintin. That's like a dumb thing from the 50s or whatever. But whatever. Maybe somebody likes it. Good for them. Yeah. So yeah, I totally agree with you, though. I think it would be phenomenal for him to return to his roots, make a practical effect horror movie a horror comedy or whatever. That would be so fun.
Yeah.
Everything you've learned, take all that, maybe bring some named cast in. That would be fun. I would love to see that.
Pull a Kevin Smith and bring back some of the actors that you worked with early in your career. How fun would that be? I mean, he would have to point them all out to everybody, but that would be fun. I mean, as a fan of those early films and I would love to see it. I would love a return to roots. I love it when directors do that, and pretty much every director has ended up making one or two films of like, I'm going to go back to that style. I haven't done that for a while. And they're always like, you did it. See? You know what you're doing still. Okay.
Yeah, those first few seemed so ingrained in who he is and what he likes that I think it would probably be easy to do. I don't think you can get that far away from something that you loved and that got you into it. And
I would hope Peter Jackson's career doesn't end up becoming he started here, but then he made the epics, which were widely successful, and then felt that he was too good to ever go back to those roots. I would hope that's not the direction his career takes shape going forward.
Yeah.
Because I want more from Peter Jackson. I think the dude is insanely talented, and he's fun to watch. And I always get excited for his cameos. And I like that. I like the choices he makes for the most part. I like his filming style. I think it's unique. It's very personal to him. And that's always fun to see. It's very, as a movie fan, he's basically like a modern callback to 1930s filmmakers. He's a callback to those old style films or the filmmakers because that's how he does it. He just happens with the epics. He's like, I got a ton of money and better equipment. So now I can show you just massive landscapes. So
yeah, he seems to be such a fan of the process and making films and coming up with ideas and making them real, like having them be able to show them to people, that I don't really see him just disappearing and being like, you know what, I've made tons of money. I'm done. I'm set. I hope that he doesn't do that.
Yeah.
And I really like all of the cameos. Like you said, he's less known for them compared to other people like M. Night or whatever. But I really like his one in Lovely Bones where he's just like in the camera shot playing
with the camera. Yeah.
Just behind a camera. It's a very tongue-in-cheek reference. It's fun.
It is. Yeah, I do love that quick cameo. I really like that one. I like his cameo as the guy outside the theater in Heavenly Creatures where Kate Winslet's character like gives him a kiss on the cheek and he's kind of like, what? And then, obviously, I love his cameos in Dead Alive and Bad Taste, and The Frighteners, because he shows up in The Frighteners as well. Peter Jackson is such a great filmmaker. Like, I feel weird calling him just a director because you said it, he loves the process and he celebrates the process, and you can see that. I know. You can see that in his films. Battery got low.
I think he's one of my favorite kinds of filmmakers where he's not just a director, but he also writes and produces and involved in all of the details and making sure everything comes through to the audience and that they get the whole vision. I think that's such an important thing to have, and I think it's much more likely to be successful when you have someone that cares that much about everything.
I'm a big fan of his. I mean, Lord of the Rings is what got me to know who he was.
Yeah. And
it was very fun for me to kind of go backwards.
Right. Same.
I love that I got to go backwards and kind of watch where he came from. I feel that that's probably a very normal story for movie fans because no one really knew who he was for quite a while. But going back, I'm like, man, you have such a unique mind and a unique imagination for how to tell these stories. There needs to be more of that. There needs to be more of him in Hollywood. Even though I'm not a big fan of Lovely Bones, I think it's a good thing that he has one that I'm not a big fan of.
Yeah.
Because it kind of grounds it a little bit, grounds him a little bit. So
no, I totally agree. I'm very standoffish if there's a director that has only made good things. I'm like, this feels too weird or too wrong. That's why
which is funny because
Christopher Nolan.
You and I are fans of at the moment perfect directors. So I'm waiting for that one to be like, no, not this one.
One of the accounts we follow on Instagram posted a thing that was like, here are directors who have made 3 great movies in a row, and I commented, I was like, well, Christopher Nolan is cheating because he's never made a bad movie. So you can't really list that. But it's I enjoy. I think that it's important to fail. I think you learn so much from failing, and I would love to see what comes after that. What you learned from it, how you changed it, what you decided to do instead. So failing is good. That's
which
not
is
a bad
funny
thing
way
at all.
for you to put it, because Lovely Bones still was not a failure. Like,
Yeah.
it still made tons of money at the box office. It has a big fan base. It's still popular. I did read, it was kind of funny. I saw Roger Ebert's review of it, and he just, oh my God. He
Loved it?
No.
Oh. Okay.
Absolutely detested this film.
Wow.
And I had to laugh because reading his review of it, it made me so happy how you and I will give like our reviews or our thoughts on stuff. Because I'm like, man, I'm so glad we're not such pretentious pieces of shit like this guy. Like,
yeah,
you're just okay, dude.
Have a little perspective, bro. Like, if you can not like certain parts of things, and it doesn't make the entire thing trash. Like, you can totally have a good performances, good every other thing. There's just a couple things I didn't really like about it. No big deal.
Right. Unless it's Open Water. That movie sucks. Don't watch it. Don't do it.
We're not talking about Open Water.
Hey, you brought up Warm Bodies. I've been wondering, like, will I get to, like, spit out my don't watch this one?
Well, there you go. Don't watch Open Water, people.
Plus, have you noticed we've had a handful of episodes now where we'll throw in just out of left field kind of reference or like a little thing, just and blip, moving on.
Yeah. It's for the listeners who are movie fans like us, or the listeners who are looking for something similar or want to join the conversation. Hey, quickly check out this other thing. It's cool. Or it sucks. Don't check it out. Whatever you do.
So that's. I mean, what else? I
think that's it.
Yeah.
I think that's it. That's Peter Jackson. I think he's a cool guy, and I'm glad we got to talk about him. So check us out on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. I haven't done anything there, but I plan to.
Yeah, I have I've got some ideas for you.
You seem like you have been going down the TikTok path, so I'm looking to you to figure out what the heck we're doing.
Dude,
with
I
TikTok.
am just trying. I have no clue what I'm doing still. My daughter has relentlessly laughed at me for being an old man trying to do TikToks, and
at least you're trying.
Not exactly knowing what I'm doing. I've got 3 little videos on there.
Yeah.
And that's it. But
well, give us a follow. Go check us out. Definitely comment on stuff, things you like about Peter Jackson. Send us DMs. I was going to say next week we're going to go and see the new James Bond movie.
About damn time.
About time. It's not about time, but it's about time. Frickin' finally we get to see the new James Bond film. So we'll see that opening night basically, and then next week's episode is all about the end of an era, Daniel Craig's time.
Yeah.
And how that went, and I'm sure some conjecture about what comes next, but mostly just appreciating it's not every day that you have the end of an era for James Bond, and so we wanted to celebrate that.
Not just the end of an era, but this is the first one that I can think of where they have advertised it as this is his conclusion. This is his tenure is over. I don't remember Pierce Brosnan getting that. I mean, Timothy Dalton didn't get it, obviously.
He didn't get announced when he came in. He didn't get announced when he left.
Right. But I mean,
I think Pierce
Roger
Brosnan
Moore
was just
never got that. I don't think.
Yeah. I think they don't really plan it, or they haven't really planned it. It's just kind of been, we lost them, or they moved on, or their contract ended. And so now it's just, now they have, I think, a plan, and that's interesting to have an exit strategy or a closing. It seems like a well-organized series where they have a beginning and an ending. So that'll be interesting to talk about. I'm excited to do that next week. Yeah. I'm excited to see it finally, like we said.
Oh, my God. So happy I finally get to watch it. But so that'll be fun to watch.
Which means that you'll have to go see it. We'll do it in order, I'm sure. So you'll have, if you don't see, what's it called?
No Time to Die.
Thank you. No Time to Die. It hasn't come out for so long, I forgot what it was called. So we're going to see No Time to Die, but we'll probably talk about it at the end, so you can hear all about the other movies at the beginning, and then when you finally see No Time to Die, you can hear it at the end.
Yeah, I imagine you and I are going to have a lot to say about it. I imagine it's going to be a big conversation sparker.
Yeah. It'll be an interesting episode format where it's kind of mashing up a review and an actual topic that we're doing.
I went and saw Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Yeah.
I was going to see that.
I wasn't sure if you were going to watch it or if you were just going to be like, meh.
I'll see it. I'm not like, Christy asked me, she's like, are you excited to see it? I was like, meh. So I understand where you're coming from, but I do want to see it. I think I want to see the original again because I kind of remember, I don't remember it too much. I remember it being kind of weird. So I need to see that, have context. And then I will see it. And then we'll do a review of it.
All right. In like a month.
Yeah. I will do it soonish. I promise.
Was there anything else? I don't think there's anything else.
We'll see you next time for James Bond. I promise to not drink too many martinis this time. That's my promise to you, the viewer, and to you, my co-host.
For those that don't get that reference, go listen to our deep dive into the entire James Bond universe.
Well, we did a top 10 James Bond episode, and got a little bit drunk. That's what happens when you don't drink beers and you drink martinis as if they're beers. And dry James Bond strength martinis.
It's what happens when Jake drinks martinis like he's drinking beer.
You were feeling you just didn't have too many.
I didn't have as many as you did, but yes, it is a funny episode, especially when Jake tries to tell us the plot of Casino Royale 100 times.
You won't experience all of the rambling that I cut out of the episode.
Because That's right. It was pre-YouTube unedited days.
So there is there's a director's cut, Snyder cut somewhere that is too hot to handle.
But it was funny.
Yeah, it was funny. Next week will be good though. I'm excited.
Yeah. All right, folks. Thank you.
All right. See you next time.
Have a good one.